Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto awakened power of the Abyss Walker and fell in love with Albedo from Overlord? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The rift between worlds. The crystalline entity pulsed with an otherworldly light as it hovered above Konoha, fracturing the sky like broken glass. Naruto Uzumaki stood atop the Hokage monument, wind whipping through his blonde hair as he assessed the situation. The village below had erupted into chaos, shinobi scrambling to evacuate civilians while others took defensive positions. What the hell is that thing? Naruto muttered, his eyes narrowing as he channeled chakra through his body. The strange object had appeared just minutes ago, tearing through reality itself with a sound like the universe screaming. Sakura landed beside him, her expression grim. Whatever it is, its disrupting chakra flows throughout the village. Even the barrier team can't form a proper defense. Naruto nodded, his decision already made. Get everyone to the shelters. I'll handle this. Naruto, trust me, he said, offering a quick smile before leaping from the monument toward the anomaly. As he approached, the air grew thick and heavy, as though reality itself was condensing around the crystalline mass. It resembled a massive diamond with countless facets, each reflecting a different scene, places Naruto had never seen before. Within one facet, he glimpsed a massive dark castle surrounded by tombs. Another showed a world of endless ice. Yet another revealed a battlefield with warriors using weapons he'd never encountered. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto called, creating a dozen clones that surrounded the entity. Each clone formed a Rasengan, the spiraling chakra spheres illuminating the darkening sky. The entity pulsed in response, sending out a wave of energy that dispelled half his clones instantly. Naruto gritted his teeth, feeling the foreign energy wash over him. It wasn't chakra, wasn't natural energy. Wasn't anything he'd ever encountered before. Whatever you are, Naruto shouted, you're not welcome here. His remaining clones launched forward, Rasengans aimed at different facets of the crystal. Upon impact, the entity shuddered and emitted a high-pitched tone that made Naruto wince. Cracks appeared along its surface, leaking a strange violet light. It's working. Naruto created more clones, pressing the advantage. From below, Kakashi's voice called up. Naruto, be careful, we don't know what happens if that thing breaks. Too late. The crystal entity shattered with a deafening crack, fragments exploding outward. Instead of falling, however, the shards hovered in the air, vibrating intensely. Naruto found himself suspended in their midst, unable to move as fragments began to orbit around him with increasing speed. I can't. He struggled against the invisible force holding him. Something's wrong. The crystal shards accelerated, becoming a blur of light and color. They spiraled inward, each fragment piercing Naruto's body, not wounding him physically, but passing into him like ghosts. With each one, images flooded his mind, endless darkness between stars. Pathways connecting different realities, ancient beings that dwelled in the spaces between worlds. Pain unlike anything he'd ever known coursed through him. Worse than extraction of the 9 tails, worse than any battle wound. His very essence was being rewritten, cells reconfigured, chakra pathways transformed. Naruto screamed, his voice echoing across dimensions. Naruto. His friends' voices seemed to come from miles away. His vision blurred as the last of the crystal fragments entered his body. The 9 tails chakra roared in response, trying to expel the foreign energy, but instead merged with it, creating something new. Naruto felt his consciousness expanding beyond his body, beyond his world. He could suddenly perceive the thin places in reality, the seams where universes met. And then he was falling. Not toward the ground but through reality itself. The familiar world of Konoha tore away like paper, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness. Naruto reached out desperately, trying to grab hold of anything familiar, but his hands passed through the dissolving images of his home. No, he shouted as the last glimpse of Konoha vanished, replaced by endless void. For what seemed like eternity, Naruto fell through absolute darkness. Occasionally, tears in the fabric of the void revealed glimpses of other worlds, strange planets, bizarre landscapes, cities unlike any he'd known. He tried to direct himself toward these openings, but the void pulled him deeper, inexorably drawing him toward some unknown destination. Finally, a massive rift opened beneath him, revealing a world of rolling hills under a night sky. Naruto plummeted toward it, the void releasing him at last. As he passed through the rift, his body burned with transformation once more. The strange cries, tall energy that had infused him reacted to the passage between worlds, solidifying into something new within him. Naruto crashed through ancient trees, bouncing off branches before slamming into the forest floor. He lay there, gasping for breath, his body tingling with unfamiliar power. Slowly, he raised his hand before his face and nearly shouted in shock. Veins of violet light coursed beneath his skin, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "What happened to me?" he whispered, struggling to his feet. The forest around him was unlike any in the land of fire. The trees were ancient and massive, the underbrush thick with strange plants. The very air felt different, heavy with an energy that wasn't chakra but something more primordial. Naruto closed his eyes, trying to center himself. When he opened them again, his perception had changed. He could see threads of energy connecting everything: trees, rocks, the ground beneath him. And beyond that, he could perceive thin spots in reality, places where this world connected to others. The crystal, he realized. It made me into something else. He experimentally channeled chakra to his hand, and was startled when not only the familiar blue energy appeared, but also strands of violet that twisted around it like living smoke. When he released the technique, the violet energy lingered momentarily before dissipating. A distant sound caught his attention: voices. Approaching through the forest, Naruto ducked behind a massive tree, instinctively masking his presence as he'd been trained. Two figures emerged from the underbrush, their appearances immediately marking them as not human. The first was a slender woman with pointed ears and silver hair, wearing a maid uniform that somehow seemed both formal and battle-ready. Behind her beard an enormous insectoid creature walking on two legs, its chitinous armor gleaming in the moonlight. "I'm certain the disturbance came from this direction," the maid said, her voice carrying clearly through the night air. "Lord Ains wants us to investigate any anomalies near Nazarick. Do you think it could be players?" The insect creature asked, its mandibles clicking as it spoke. "Possibly. The energy signature was unlike anything our barriers have detected before." Naruto remained perfectly still, evaluating his options. These beings were clearly powerful, he could sense their strength, even from a distance, but he needed information. Where was he? What was this world? How could he get home? His deliberation was cut short when a third figure dropped silently from the canopy above, landing directly behind him. "Found you," came a cold, feminine voice. Naruto spun, instinct taking over as he leapt backward, putting distance between himself and the newcomer. His eyes widened at the sight of her. She was beautiful in an inhuman way: pale skin, golden eyes with vertical pupils, and flowing black hair. Two curved horns emerged from her temples, and massive black wings extended from her back. She wore an elegant white dress with a golden spider web pattern that somehow enhanced rather than diminished her lethal aura. Most striking, however, was the overwhelming hostility directed at him. "An intruder," she said, her voice carrying to her companions. "And not a human one, from the energy he emits." The maid and insect warrior immediately moved to flank him, creating a triangle formation with Naruto at the center. "I'm not looking for trouble," Naruto said, raising his hands slightly. "I just need to figure out where I am and how to get home." The horned woman's expression didn't change. "Nazarick does not offer directions to trespassers. It offers only death." She extended her hand, and a battle axe materialized in her grasp. "I am Albedo, guardian overseer of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Your intrusion ends here." Naruto assessed his opponents quickly. All three radiated power beyond what normal humans in his world possessed. The woman called Albedo seemed strongest, her presence reminding him somewhat of a tailed beast in its intensity. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding," he tried again. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I was fighting something in my world when it exploded and sent me here." "I'm not your enemy. Your explanation is irrelevant," Albedo replied. "Any who approach Nazarick uninvited are enemies by definition." She moved with blinding speed, her axe leaving through the air where Naruto had stood a split second earlier. He flipped backward, landing on the trunk of a tree and sticking there with chakra. Fast, he muttered, genuinely impressed. The insect warrior launched forward next, its pincers snapping at Naruto's position. He pushed off the tree, creating 3 shadow clones mid-leap that scattered in different directions. The maid pursued 2 of them, throwing what appeared to be knives that moved with unnatural precision. Shadow clones. Albedo's eyes narrowed. Interesting. One clone engaged the insect warrior, while another faced the maid. Naruto himself found Albedo suddenly before him, her axe swinging in a deadly arc. He ducked under it, feeling the weapon pass so close it disturbed his hair. "I don't want to fight you," he shouted, creating more clones that surrounded Albedo. She smiled coldly. "Then surrender and die quickly." The clones attacked simultaneously, but Albedo moved with impossible grace, her axe cutting through them like paper. Naruto felt each clone's dispersal, gathering their brief experiences fighting her. She was stronger than she looked, her delicate appearance hiding monstrous physical power. When one clone managed to graze her shoulder, Albedo's expression changed from cold efficiency to outrage. "You dare to touch me? Only Lord Ains may touch this body." Her next attack shattered the ground where Naruto landed, forcing him to leap high into the air. As he did, he felt the strange new power stirring within him, responding to his need. Acting on instinct, he reached out with it, feeling the fabric of space around him. To everyone's surprise, including his own, the air before him tore open, revealing a swirling violet portal. Naruto fell through it, the rift closing behind him before Albedo's axe could follow. He emerged 20 feet away, behind the insect warrior who had just dispersed his clone. Without hesitation, Naruto formed a Rasengan, the familiar spiral of chakra now interwoven with threads of violet energy. He drove it into the creature's back, sending it crashing through several trees. "Cocytus," the maid called out, momentarily distracted. Naruto used the opportunity to create another rift, stepping through it to appear behind her. Before he could strike, however, Albedo was there, her axe intercepting his attack. The collision of their powers sent a shockwave through the forest, uprooting smaller trees and creating a circular clearing around them. "What manner of creature are you?" Albedo demanded, golden eyes blazing. "Those are not tier spells." Naruto jumped back, creating distance as he tried to understand his new abilities. The portals seemed to come naturally, as though he'd always known how to tear holes in space itself. "I told you, I'm not from this world," he said. "I'm a shinobi from Konoha, and whatever brought me here changed me somehow." Albedo raised her hand, signaling the maid to hold position. Cocytus was recovering, shaking of the impact of Naruto's Rasengan with apparent difficulty. "This power." Albedo studied him intently. "Lord Ains will want to examine this personally." Before Naruto could respond, the air several yards away distorted. A swirling black portal, different from the ones he had created, formed in the center of the clearing. From it emerged a skeletal figure in elaborate dark robes, radiating an aura of death and power that made Naruto tense. "Albedo," the skeleton spoke, its jawbone moving though it possessed no throat or vocal cords. "I sensed the disturbance from the throne room. What have you found?" Immediately, "Albedo, Cocytus," and the maid dropped to one knee. "Lord Ains," Albedo's voice had completely changed, now filled with adoration. "We discovered this intruder near the outer perimeter. He possesses unusual abilities unlike any tier magic we have encountered." The skeleton's empty eye sockets fixed on Naruto, green points of light flaring within their depths. "Interesting. Yo, you've created quite a commotion for someone who just arrived in this world." Naruto maintained his guard but straightened slightly. "You're the leader here. I am Ains Gaon, ruler of the Great Tomb of Nazarick." The skeleton made a subtle gesture with one bony hand. "And you are trespassing on my domain." "Not intentionally," Naruto replied. "I was fighting something in my world that exploded and sent me here. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to get back." Ains studied him silently for a moment. "You said you were changed by whatever brought you here. Explain." Naruto hesitated, then decided truth was his best option. "There was a crystal entity that appeared above my village. When I fought it, it shattered and the fragments went into me. Next thing I knew, I was falling through darkness until I landed here." Now I can see connections between places and open these portals. An Abyss Walker, Ains said, surprising everyone present. I thought they were merely legends even in Yggdrasil. You know what happened to me? Naruto asked, hope rising. I have read of similar beings, Ains replied carefully. Creatures that exist partially between dimensions, able to traverse the spaces between worlds. They were said to be either born that way or transformed by exposure to the primordial void. Albedo rose to her feet. Lord Ains, shall I eliminate this intruder? No. Ains raised a hand. This presents an opportunity for study. Naruto Uzumaki, was it? I propose a temporary arrangement. You will remain in Nazarick under observation, and in exchange, I will assist you in understanding your new abilities and potentially finding a way back to your world. Naruto considered the offer, sensing there was more to it than simple generosity. And if I decline, then Albedo will continue her duties as guardian overseer, Ains replied simply. The implied threat was clear. Naruto glanced at Albedo, whose golden eyes promised pain should he refuse. Fine, he said finally. But I'm not a prisoner. I'm a guest. Of course, Ains agreed with a slight nod. Albedo will be your primary escort during your stay. She will ensure you have what you need while also ensuring you don't wander into areas restricted to guests. Albedo's expression flashed with momentary displeasure before returning to its serene mask. As you command, Lord Ains. Now come, Ains gestured, opening another dark portal. Welcome to Nazarick, Naruto Uzumaki. I believe our association may prove mutually beneficial. With one last look at the strange forest around him, Naruto stepped through the portal after Ains. Albedo close behind him. Whatever this world was, he was now committed to understanding it, and the new power that coursed through his veins. The great tomb of Nazarick defied Naruto's expectations. Rather than a grim sepulchre, he found himself in a lavish palace of dark marble and gold. Intricate carvings adorned every surface, depicting scenes of conquest and glory. Corridors were patrolled by undead warriors, demonic entities, and other creatures that would have sent civilians in his world running in terror. Naruto, however, had seen enough in his life not to be easily intimidated. He walked beside Ains with Albedo following closely, maintaining a constant awareness of his surroundings. Your home is impressive, he offered, breaking the silence. This is merely the 9th floor, Ains replied. Nazarick consists of 10 floors, each with its own guardians and defenses. Few outsiders have seen even this much and lived to speak of it. I'm honored, I guess, Naruto said dryly. Albedo moved closer behind him. You should be. Lord Ains's mercy is a rare gift. They arrived at an ornate door guarded by 2 tall insectoid warriors similar to Cocytus but less individually powerful. The guards bowed deeply as Ains approached. These will be your quarters, Ains said, gesturing for the doors to open. You will find them comfortable, though I advise against attempting to leave without escort. Nazarick's defenses are reactive to unauthorized movement. The chamber beyond was luxurious, a large bed with silken sheets, elegant furniture, and a balcony overlooking an artificial night sky complete with stars and moon. Despite the comfort, Naruto recognized a gilded cage when he saw one. I have matters requiring my attention, Ains continued. Albedo will remain to answer any immediate questions you might have. Tomorrow, we shall begin examining your abilities more thoroughly. With that, the skeletal ruler departed, leaving Naruto alone with Albedo. The tension in the room immediately thickened. So, Naruto turned to face her. You're my jailer. Albedo's perfect features arranged themselves into a cold smile. I am the guardian overseer of Nazarick. Monitoring a potential threat falls within my duties. I'm not a threat unless someone makes me one, Naruto countered, walking to the balcony. He placed his hands on the stone railing, looking out at the artificial night. This isn't even outside, is it? The 6th floor contains an environment designed to mimic the surface world, Albedo explained, remaining near the door. Lord Ains has graciously allowed you a view of it. Naruto turned back to her. Why do you serve him so devotedly? Is it just because he's powerful? The question seemed to offend Albedo deeply. Her wings rustled as she straightened to her full height. I serve Lord Ains because he is the last of the supreme beings, the rulers who created us. My loyalty is absolute and eternal. My love for him transcends mere devotion. Love. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You're in love with a skeleton. In an instant, Albedo was across the room, her hand around Naruto's throat, pinning him against the balcony railing. Her golden eyes blazed with fury. Do not presume to judge what you cannot comprehend, she hissed. Lord Ains's form is merely the vessel for his supreme intellect and power. He is perfection itself. Naruto didn't struggle, meeting her gaze steadily. Where I come from, people choose who they love. They aren't programmed for it. Something flickered in Albedo's eyes, uncertainty, perhaps, or a deeper anger. She released him and stepped back. You know nothing of this world or its ways, she said. Rest while you can. Tomorrow's examinations will test the limits of your endurance. She turned to leave, but Naruto's voice stopped her. Why does Ains really want me here? It's not generosity. Albedo paused at the door. Lord Ains sees value in all things, including you. Be grateful your value currently exceeds the nuisance of your presence. With that, she departed, the heavy doors closing behind her. Naruto heard the subtle click of a lock engaging. Alone, he sat on the edge of the bed, examining his hands where the violet energy still occasionally pulsed beneath his skin. He closed his eyes, focusing inward as he'd been taught, seeking the familiar presence of Kurama. You there, Fox? He asked mentally. A rumbling voice answered from within. I am here, though this place disturbs me. You and me both, Naruto agreed. What do you make of these new powers? The crystal entity altered your chakra network, Kurama explained. You now draw energy not just from yourself or nature, but from the void between dimensions. It has changed you, Naruto. You are becoming something neither human nor Biju. Can we use it to get home? Perhaps, with practice. But this, Ains, creature, be wary. He emanates death in a way I have never encountered. Naruto nodded, opening his eyes. And Albedo, she is dangerous in a different way, Kurama rumbled. Her devotion makes her unpredictable. And there is something artificial about her emotions, as though they were imposed rather than developed. Programmed, Naruto murmured, recalling his earlier accusation. He stood and approached the balcony again, looking out at the false sky. Somewhere beyond this artificial world, beyond this dimension, Konoha waited. His friends would be searching for him, wondering what had happened. He needed to find a way back. But first, he needed to understand what he had become. Morning in Nazarick arrived by decree rather than sunrise. The artificial sky on the 6th floor simply lightened on schedule, birds beginning to sing at precisely the right moment. Naruto, who had spent most of the night meditating and exploring his new abilities, felt the change immediately. The door to his chamber unlocked and opened to reveal the silver-haired maid from the forest. Lord Ains requests your presence in the arena, she said formally. I am Yuri Alpha, and I will escort you there. Naruto nodded, following her into the corridor. The arena sounds ominous. It is where Guardians train and demonstrate their abilities, Yuri explained without emotion. Lord Ains wishes to observe your powers in a controlled environment. They traversed several floors via magical teleportation circles. Descending deeper into Nazarick, Naruto maintained a mental map of their route, noting defensive positions and guard patterns. The ninja in him never fully relaxed in enemy territory, regardless of any temporary truce. The arena itself was massive, a coliseum that could seat thousands, though today it stood empty save for a small group gathered in its center. Ains sat upon an elevated throne at one end, with several figures Naruto hadn't yet met standing nearby. Albedo waited in the arena's center, now dressed in full black armor that accentuated her figure while offering formidable protection. Ah, our guest arrives, Ains announced as Naruto approached. I trust you rested well. Well enough, Naruto replied, his eyes scanning the others present. Besides Cocytus, the Ri was a dark elf child with mismatched eyes, a petite vampire girl, and what appeared to be a middle-aged human man in a pristine butler's uniform. Allow me to introduce the floor guardians of Nazarick, Ains gestured to each in turn. You've met Albedo and Cocytus. This is Aura and Mare, twins who guard the 6th floor, Shultir Bloodfallen of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors, and Sebastian, who oversees the 9th floor. Each guardian acknowledged the introduction with varying degrees of interest or hostility. The vampire, Shultir licked her lips in a way that made Naruto instinctively wary. Now, Ains continued, I wish to observe your abilities. These, Abyss Walker, powers you've manifested. Albedo will serve as your opponent. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You want us to fight? A controlled demonstration. Ains clarified. Neither of you is to inflict permanent damage on the other. This is for research purposes only. Albedo bowed deeply. I live to serve your curiosity, Lord Ains. Naruto stepped forward into the center of the arena, facing Albedo. Any other rules I should know about? Do not destroy the arena, Ains replied simply. Beyond that, you may demonstrate your full capabilities. With a slight nod from Ains, the match began. Albedo didn't hesitate, launching forward with her battle axe materializing in her hands. Naruto dodged the first strike, feeling the air pressure as the weapon passed inches from his face. Not holding back, are you? He commented, flipping backward to create distance. Lord Ains wishes to see your true abilities, Albedo replied, advancing steadily. It would dishonor him to give less than my best. Naruto formed hand signs, creating a dozen shadow clones that surrounded Albedo. She responded by spinning in place, her Z creating a whirlwind that dispelled half of them instantly. The remaining clones attacked from different angles, forcing her to defend multiple positions simultaneously. From the sidelines, Aura whistled appreciatively. He's fast. But Lady Albedo is stronger, Mare added quietly. Naruto felt the new power stirring within him as he fought, responding to the adrenaline of battle. As Albedo destroyed his last clone, he channeled the violet energy deliberately for the first time, focusing it into his palms. The air before him shimmered and tore, creating a portal through which he stepped. He emerged behind Albedo, Rasengan forming in his hand, but she had anticipated this, pivoting to block with the flat of her axe. The spiraling chakra sphere, now interwoven with violet energy, ground against the weapon with a sound like reality itself being scraped. Predictable, Albedo taunted, pushing back with incredible strength. Naruto grinned. Am I? A second portal opened beneath their feet. Both fell through, emerging 20 feet above the arena. In midair, Albedo's wings spread to stabilize her, but Naruto was already creating a third portal, diving through it to appear above her. His foot connected with her back, driving her toward the ground. Albedo twisted in the air, recovering control, and landed on her feet with minimal impact. Naruto landed opposite her, the violet energy now visibly coursing over his skin. Impressive spatial manipulation, Ains commented from his throne. But what else can you do with this power? Taking the cue, Naruto channeled the void energy differently. Instead of creating portals, he condensed it around his right arm, forming a swirling vortex of violet and blue. The arena darkened slightly as though the light itself was being drawn into the technique. Let's try this, he said, charging forward. Albedo braced herself, wings flaring as she prepared to counter. When Naruto struck, his fist didn't connect physically, instead, the void energy expanded outward, creating a localized distortion in space. The air around Albedo warped, gravity temporarily multiplying. She dropped to one knee, her armor creaking under the sudden pressure. What is this? She gasped, struggling against the invisible force. I'm calling it void pressure, Naruto replied, maintaining the technique with visible effort. Just figured it out last night. With a roar of effort, Albedo forced herself to stand, her incredible strength allowing her to push back against the distorted gravity. Her golden eyes blazed with battle lust as she swung her axe in a horizontal arc. The weapon cut through the spatial distortion, disrupting Naruto's technique. The backlash sent both combatants skidding backward. Before either could renew their attack, Ains raised a skeletal hand. Enough for now, he commanded, most illuminating. Naruto relaxed his stance, the violet energy receding beneath his skin. Albedo immediately lowered her weapon and bowed toward Ains. What do you think, Lord Ains? She asked, her voice once again filled with adoration. His abilities are unique, Ains replied thoughtfully. The ability to create portals is uncommon but not unheard of. However, this manipulation of spatial forces, combined with his original abilities from his world, fascinating. Naruto approached the throne, keeping a respectful distance. In my world, we us. E-chakra, a combination of physical and spiritual energy. These new powers seem to be altering how my chakra works, letting me draw on something else. The void between worlds, Ains nodded. A primer. Dial force that exists outside conventional reality. Few beings can harness it without being consumed by it. You seem to know a lot about this, Naruto observed. I have encountered many things in my existence, Ains replied vaguely. Knowledge is power, especially regarding the unusual. Before their conversation could continue, a new figure teleported into the arena, a beautiful woman with platinum blonde hair and a white dress. Her features betraying anxiety. Lord Ains, she called, rushing forward before dropping to one knee. Forgive the interruption, but we've detected a large force approaching Nazarick from the east. They bear the insignia of the slain theocracy's black scripture. Ains's empty eye sockets flared brighter. The theocracy. Here, interesting timing. They have surrounded themselves with a barrier that resists our scrying, the woman continued. We estimate at least 30 high-level combatants, including what appears to be a godkin. Albedo stepped forward, all business once more. Lord Ains, allow me to lead our forces against these insects who dare approach Nazarick. No need for excessive force yet, Ains replied, rising from his throne. Let us observe their intentions first. They may simply be investigating the dimensional disturbance from yesterday. His empty gaze turned to Naruto. It seems our experiments must be postponed. However, this presents an opportunity to see your abilities in a more practical scenario. You want me to fight these people? Naruto asked. I want you to observe them with me, Ains clarified. Your perspective as an outsider may prove valuable. If combat becomes necessary, consider it a chance to further demonstrate your capabilities. Naruto nodded slowly. All right, but I should tell you, I don't kill unnecessarily. If that's a problem, I'll sit this one out. A tense silence followed his statement. The Guardians looked at him with expressions ranging from disgust to incredulity. Albedo in particular seemed offended by his moral stance. After a moment, Ains made a sound like chuckling bones. How interesting. Very well, Naruto Uzumaki. Fight as you see fit. For now, let us go meet our uninvited guests. The forces of the slain theocracy had established a perimeter around a large clearing a mile from Nazarick's visible tomb entrance. Their formation was disciplined and professional, clearly militar. Why trained rather than adventurers or mercenaries? At the center of their formation stood 6 figures in distinctive regalia, each radiating power that Naruto could sense even from a distance. Naruto stood atop a small hill overlooking their position, concealed by a barrier spell Ains had cast. Beside him were Ains himself, Albedo, and Demiurge, a sharply dressed demon who had joined them from another floor of Nazarick. The Black Scripture, Demiurge explained quietly. The theocracy's strongest fighting force. Those 6 in the center are their captain and core members. What's a godkin? Naruto asked, recalling the term from earlier. Descendants of beings they worship as gods, Ains replied. Humans with unusually high potential for power. Still insects compared to Nazarick, but stronger than ordinary humans. Naruto studied the formation with a tactician eye. They're not positioning for attack. That's a defensive formation. They're protecting something. Demiurge raised an eyebrow, seemingly impressed by Naruto's assessment. Indeed, the question is, what? As if in answer, the center of the theocracy formation began to glow. A magic circle appeared on the ground, intricate symbols arranged in concentric rings. The 6 central figures took positions around it, beginning a synchronized chant. A ritual of some kind, Albedo observed. No, Ains's voice carried sudden urgency. That's a summoning circle. They're attempting to call something to this location. The magic circle pulsed with increasing intensity, the air above it shimmering like a heat mirage. Naruto felt a familiar sensation, the same distortion he'd experienced when the crystal entity appeared in Konoha. They're opening a dimensional rift, he said, the violet energy beneath his skin responding to the disturbance. I can feel it, but why here? Why now? Demiurge wondered, Ains's empty eye sockets fixed on Naruto. Perhaps they detected your arrival. If they have seers or prophets among them, why might be attempting to exploit the weakened barriers between worlds. The summoning circle flared blindingly, and a tear appeared in the air above it, not unlike the portals Naruto could now create, but much larger and more unstable. Through it emerged a crystalline entity similar to the one that had appeared in Konoha, though smaller in size. "That's like the thing that sent me here," Naruto exclaimed. "A void harvester," Ains said grimly. "They feed on dimensional energy, growing larger with each world they consume. The theocracy must be attempting to control it." The theocracy members were now channeling magic into restraining chains that wrapped around the crystalline entity. The creature pulsed with angry light, fighting against the bindings. "We should destroy it before they can control it," Albedo suggested. "And eliminate the humans as well." "Wait," Naruto held up a hand. "Something's wrong. The entity, it's unstable." As he spoke, cracks appeared across the crystal's surface, violet light spilling from within. The theocracy members intensified their chanting, desperately trying to complete their binding spell, but the fracture spread rapidly. "They've miscalculated," Ains observed. "The dimensional barriers are already weakened from your transition. Their summoning is accelerating the deterioration." The crystal entity shattered with a deafening crack. Unlike Naruto's experience, however, the fragments did not seek a host. Instead, they expanded outward, each becoming a tiny rift in space. The theocracy forces scattered as dozens of small portals opened throughout their formation. From these rifts emerged creatures Naruto had never seen before, writhing masses of tentacles, floating eyes surrounded by teeth, humanoid figures with too many limbs or mouths where their faces should be. The dimensional shards had created doorways for denizens of the void to enter this world. "Void spawn," Demiurge identified them. "Lesser creatures that dwell in the spaces between worlds." "The theocracy has made a grave error," Ains said, lowering the concealment barrier. "These beings will not distinguish between their summoners and other prey." Already, the void creatures were attacking the theocracy forces. Despite their training in magic, the humans were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer number of entities pouring through the rifts. "We need to close those portals," Naruto said, the violet energy surging through him in response to the chaos. "If too many void creatures enter this world, they could spread beyond our ability to contain them." Ains nodded. "Albedo, Demiurge, contain any creatures that escape the immediate area. Naruto, since your abilities seem attuned to these dimensional breaches, focus on closing the rifts." Without waiting for further discussion, Naruto leapt from the hill, creating a portal mid-jump that deposited him in the center of the chaos. The theocracy soldiers who weren't already engaged with void spawn turned their weapons toward him. "He's with the tomb," one shouted. "Kill him." Naruto dodged a volley of magically enhanced arrows, creating shadow clones that scattered throughout the battlefield. Each clone targeted a different dimensional rift, channeling the violet energy to manipulate the tiers in space. The original Naruto found himself face to face with one of the 6 central figures, a young woman with silver hair and heterochromatic eyes who wielded a spear of pure light. "You're the anomaly," she said, her voice eerily calm amid the chaos. "The dimensional walker our seers detected. And you're the ones who ripped open reality," Naruto countered, forming a Rasengan in his palm. "Not very responsible of you." She lunged with her spear, the weapon moving faster than an ordinary human could track. Naruto sidestepped, feeling the heat of the light weapon as it passed him. He countered with his Rasengan, but the woman erected a barrier of golden light that absorbed the impact. "The theocracy requires your power," she stated flatly. "Surrender yourself, and we may spare your life." "Not interested," Naruto replied, creating another portal beneath his feet. He emerged above her, dropping down with an axe kick that shattered her barrier. Before he could follow up, however, a tentacled void spawn wrapped itself around his leg, acidic secretions burning through his pants to the skin beneath. Naruto hissed in pain, creating a clone that transformed into a kunai. He caught the weapon and slashed through the tentacles, freeing himself. The void creature shrieked, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Across the battlefield, his clones were making progress sealing the smaller rifts. Each required precise application of the violet energy. Too much would expand the tear. Too little would fail to close it. Naruto was learning as he worked, developing his technique through trial and error. Meanwhile, Albedo and Demiurge had joined the fray, though they focused on containing the void spawn rather than engaging the theocracy directly. Ains remained on the hill, occasionally casting spells that eliminated larger clusters of creatures. The silver-haired woman had recovered and now charged Naruto again, her spear crackling with intensified energy. This time, instead of dodging, Naruto met her attack directly. He channeled void energy into his hand, catching the spear shaft just below its glowing head. What? She gasped as her weapon froze in place, caught in a localized spatial distortion. Your spear is impressive, Naruto said, but light still bends in a gravity well. With his free hand, he formed a Rasengan infused with violet energy and drove it into the ground at their feet. Space warped around the impact point, creating a miniature singularity that pulled both of them downward. The woman lost her grip on her spear as the artificial gravity intensified. What is this magic? She demanded, struggling to stand. Not magic, Naruto corrected, maintaining his footing through chakra control. Just physics, bent a little. A massive void spawn, larger than the others, with a body like living obsidian and limbs that seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously, burst from the largest remaining rift. It towered over the battlefield, its presence causing reality itself to waver around it. A void lord, Ains's voice carried across the field. The rifts have grown too unstable. The creature extended what might have been an arm, though it seemed to stretch impossibly far without actually lengthening. Where it touched, theocracy soldiers simply ceased to exist, not killed, but erased from reality itself. We need to close the main rift, Naruto shouted, releasing his technique and allowing the silver-haired woman to escape. She scrambled away, abandoning her weapon as she fled toward the remaining theocracy forces. Naruto created dozens more shadow clones, all converging on the largest dimensional tier from which the Void Lord had emerged. Each clone channeled as much energy as it could sustain, attempting to sew the fabric of reality back together. It's not working, one clone called out. The rift is too large. Naruto gritted his teeth, pushing more power into the technique. The violet energy surged through his network, burning like fire in his veins. He could feel Kurama's chakra responding, merging with the void energy to create something new. I need more power, he muttered. As if in response to his need, Albedo appeared beside him, her armor splattered with the ichor of void spawn. Lord Ains commands me to assist you, she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely pleased with the assignment. Can you help me channel energy into sealing this rift? Naruto asked, sweat beading on his forehead from the strain. Albedo nodded curtly. I can provide power. Direct it as needed. She placed her hand on Naruto's shoulder, and immediately he felt a surge of energy flowing into him, different from chakra or void energy, but powerful nonetheless. The combined force flowed through Naruto's network, amplified and focused through his unique abilities. The edges of the massive rift began to contract, slowly at first. Then with increasing speed, the Void Lord roared in rage, sensing its connection to the abyss being severed. It turned its attention to Naruto and Albedo, reaching out with its reality-erasing touch. Look out, Naruto shouted, grabbing Albedo around the waist and diving through a hastily created portal. They emerged several yards away, rolling across the ground from their momentum. Naruto ended up on top of Albedo, their faces inches apart. For a brief moment, surprise replaced the perpetual disdain in her golden eyes. Get off me, she hissed, though with less venom than expected. Naruto quickly complied, returning his attention to the rift. We almost had it closed. One more push should do it. The Void Lord was now focused entirely on them, recognizing the threat to its presence in this world. It moved with unexpected speed for its size, covering the distance between them in seconds. Together, Naruto said, extending his hand to Albedo. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Once again, their energies merged, flowing through Naruto and into the dimensional tier. This time, he added Kurama's chakra to the mix, the golden energy of the nine tails intertwining with Albedo's power and his own void energy. The rift contracted rapidly, collapsing inward just as the Void Lord reached them. The creature's form was caught in the closing tear, half in this world, half in the void. It thrashed wildly, tearing at reality in its desperation to remain. It's fighting the closure, Albedo observed, strain evident in her voice. Then let's give it something else to worry about, Naruto replied. Without releasing Albedo's hand, he formed a one-handed seal with his free hand, summoning 3 shadow clones. Each clone formed a Rasengan, the spiraling spheres now a mesmerizing blend of blue, violet, and gold. Now, Naruto commanded. The clones attacked simultaneously, driving their Rasengans into different points on the Void Lord's partially materialized form. The creature's body distorted under the impacts, its substance unable to maintain coherence under the combined assault. With a sound like the universe taking a breath, the rift collapsed completely, taking the Void Lord with it. A shockwave of displaced air knocked everyone nearby to the ground, extinguishing smaller rifts and dispersing the remaining void spawn. Silence fell across the battlefield. The few surviving Theocracy soldiers were retreating, carrying their wounded. The silver-haired woman gave Naruto one last look, not of hatred, but of calculated assessment, before disappearing into the forest with her comrades. Naruto helped Albedo to her feet, noticing she didn't immediately pull her hand from his. "We did it," he said, fatigue evident in his voice. "Your abilities are impressive," she admitted reluctantly. "Using my power as a catalyst for your techniques showed unexpected adaptability." "We make a good team," Naruto said with a tired smile. Albedo withdrew her hand at that, her expression cooling. "Do not presume too much, Abyss Walker. I serve only Lord Ains." Before Naruto could respond, Ains and Demiurge approached. The skeleton lord surveyed the battlefield with glowing eyes. "The threat is contained, though not without cost," Ains observed. "The dimensional barriers in this region have been weakened further. More incursions may follow." "The Theocracy's actions were reckless," Demiurge added. "Their attempt to control a void harvester nearly resulted in catastrophe." Naruto looked at the scorched earth where the main rift had been. "They wanted its power. The same power that changed me when I fought the larger one in my world. And now they've seen what you can do," Ains noted. "You've become a person of interest to them, which complicates matters." Albedo stepped forward. "Lord Ains, I recommend increasing our patrols and strengthening the magical barriers around Nazarick." "Indeed," Ains agreed, "but we must also address the root cause of these incursions." He turned to Naruto. "Your presence here has catalyzed these events. The powers you've gained as an Abyss Walker are drawing attention, not all of it welcome." "I didn't ask for any of this," Naruto said, fatigue making his voice sharp. "I was defending my village when that crystal thing appeared." "Nevertheless, you are now part of this situation," Ains replied calmly. "And perhaps essential to its resolution." "What do you mean?" "The dimensional barriers between worlds are weakening," Ains explained. "Your transition was merely the first symptom. If the decline continues, more powerful entities than today's Void Lord will find their way here, and potentially to your world as well." The implications hit Naruto like a physical blow. If void creatures invaded Konoha, would his friends have any defense against them? The Theocracy soldiers, trained fighters with magic, had been nearly helpless against the smaller spawn. "So what do we do?" he asked. "First, you must master your new abilities," Ains said. "An Abyss Walker with full control of their powers might be able to repair the weakened barriers." "And if I can't?" Ains's empty eye sockets seemed to darken. "Then we prepare for war against the void itself." The four of them stood in silence, surveying the battlefield. The dimensional tiers had closed, but Naruto could still sense weakness in reality around them, like cracks in glass that hadn't yet shattered. Whatever had begun with the crystal entity in Konoha, it was far from over. And somehow, he now stood with these strange beings from another world as the only barrier between reality and chaos. As they turned to return to Nazarick, Naruto noticed Albedo watching him with an unreadable expression. When their eyes met, she quickly looked away, but not before he caught a glimpse of something beyond her usual contempt, perhaps respect, perhaps curiosity. Whatever it was, Naruto suspected their reluctant partnership had only just begun. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Shadows across realms. 3 days after the battle with the Theocracy forces, Naruto stood at the edge of a crystalline lake on Nazarick's 6th floor. The artificial sky above shifted rough twilight colors as he focused on the violet energy flowing through his body. With careful concentration, he extended his hand toward the water's surface, creating a small dimensional rift that hovered inches above the lake. "Smaller," he muttered to himself. "More precise." The portal contracted until it was no larger than a coin, a perfect circle of swirling darkness. Naruto held it stable for 30 seconds before allowing it to close with minimal disturbance to the surrounding air. Your control is improving, came Albedo's voice from behind him. Naruto turned to find her watching from beneath a nearby tree, her white dress a stark contrast against the darkening foliage. Since the battle, she had been assigned as his primary training partner, an arrangement neither had initially welcomed. Still not enough, Naruto replied, wiping sweat from his brow. If I'm going to repair dimensional barriers, I need perfect control. Albedo approached, her golden eyes assessing him critically. Lord Ains believes you're making adequate progress. The dimensional disturbances have not worsened since the theocracy's failed summoning. But they haven't improved either, Naruto countered. I can feel them, Albedo. Like cracks in glass spreading outward. It's only a matter of time before something worse than that Void Lord finds its way through. She stood beside him now, looking out across the lake. Lord Ains has sent scouts to locate the items he mentioned. If they exist, they should help stabilize the barriers. If they exist, Naruto echoed skeptically. Convenient that these RTI facts were never mentioned before I arrived. Albedo's wings rustled slightly, a tell Naruto had come to recognize as irritation. Do you question Lord Ains's knowledge? I question everyone's knowledge, Naruto said with a tired smile. Occupational hazard of being a ninja. Before Albedo could respond, a dark portal opened nearby. Demiurge stepped through, adjusting his glasses as the gateway closed behind him. The scouts have returned, he announced without preamble. One of the artifacts has been located. Both Naruto and Albedo turned their full attention to the demon. Where? Albedo asked. In ruins beneath the Azerlija Mountains, Demiurge replied. The kingdom of Re-Estais claims the territory, though their control in that region is tenuous at best. What kind of artifact are we talking about? Naruto asked. Demiurge smiled thinly. According to the reports, it's a ceremonial dagger called the Void Needle. Legend claims it was used by ancient practitioners to stitch clo. Said the seams of reality, when breaches occurred. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Sounds exactly like what we need. Almost too convenient. Lord Ains anticipated your skepticism, Demiurge replied. Augusts you accompany the retrieval team to verify the artifact's authenticity. Your unique sensitivity to dimensional energies should make you an ideal judge. And who's on this retrieval team? Naruto asked, though he already suspected the answer. Albedo will lead, Demiurge confirmed. Along with Shultir and a contingent of shadow demons for reconnaissance. Albedo nodded crisply. When do we depart? Tomorrow at dawn. Lord Ains wishes to speak with both of you before you leave. Demiurge created another portal. I suggest you complete your training for today and rest. The mountains are treacherous, even for beings of your caliber. After the demon departed, Naruto turned back to the lake, creating another small portal. This time, he tried something different, extending his sense through the rift to perceive what lay beyond without physically crossing through. What are you attempting? Albedo asked, watching with undisguised curiosity. If I'm going to fix dimensional barriers, I need to be able to see them first, Naruto explained, his voice strained with concentration. Not just feel them, but actually perceive where they're damaged. The tiny portal pulsed with violet light as Naruto pushed his consciousness through it. For a brief moment, his awareness expanded beyond normal perception. He could see threads of reality stretching outward in all directions, some vibrant and strong. Others frayed and weakened. The fabric between dimensions appeared as a vast cosmic tapestry, beautiful in its complexity yet clearly damaged in places. Naruto gasped, breaking the connection as the strain became too much. He staggered backward, and would have fallen if Albedo hadn't caught his arm to steady him. What did you see? She asked, her grip firm but not painful. Everything, Naruto whispered, his eyes wide. The connections between worlds, thousands of them, all interlinked. And the damage is worse than I thought. It's not just here, the barriers are weakening across multiple dimensions. Albedo released his arm once he was stable. All the more reason to secure these artifacts quickly. Naruto nodded, his expression grave. Tomorrow, then. As he turned to leave, Albedo spoke again. Your determination is admirable. Few would push themselves so hard for a world not their own. Coming from her, the statement was practically effusive praise. Naruto offered a small smile. My world is connected to this one now. If one falls, the other might follow. Albedo studied him for a moment longer, her golden eyes unreadable. Rest well, Abyss Walker. Tomorrow will test us both. The Azerlija Mountains formed a natural barrier between the Re-Estais Kingdom and the Baharuth Empire, their snow-capped peaks piercing the clouds like ancient stone teeth. Beneath their imposing heights lay a complex network of caves and tunnels, some natural, others carved by various races over centuries. Naruto, Albedo, and Shultir materialized at the base of one such mountain, emerging from a teleportation circle that glowed briefly before fading. The sudden cold hit Naruto immediately, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The entrance should be 2 kilometers north, Albedo stated. Consulting a small map, she had exchanged her usual dress for battle armor, glossy black plate that accentuated her figure while offering formidable protection. A massive axe was strapped to her back. Shultir, the petite vampire guardian, looked distinctly uncomfortable in the daylight despite the heavy cloud cover. She twirled a delicate parasol above her head, her crimson eyes scanning the surroundings with evident distaste. I don't understand why Lord Ains required my presence for this mission, she complained. Underground excavation is hardly suited to my talents. Your earth magic may prove necessary, Albedo replied curtly. And Lord Ains's decisions are not for us to question. Naruto had been silent since their arrival, his attention focused on something beyond normal perception. The violet energy beneath his skin pulsed more prominently here, responding to something in the environment. There's dimensional distortion in these mountains, he said finally. Strong. Like the barriers are particularly thin. Shultir raised a perfectly manicured eyebrow. Is that why you look like you're about to be sick? It's disorienting, Naruto admitted. Like standing in 2 places at once. Albedo studied him with narrowed eyes. Can you use this sensation to locate the artifact? Naruto nodded, turning slightly to his right. This way. The distortion gets stronger as we move toward the center of the mountain range. They set off across the snowy terrain, Naruto leading the way. Shadow demons, sinister entities composed of living darkness, scouted ahead. Their amorphous forms blending with the mountain shadows. Despite their seemingly insubstantial nature, Naruto had learned they were capable combatants and excellent spies. After an hour of trekking through increasingly difficult terrain, they came upon ancient stone steps carved into the mountainside, barely visible beneath centuries of erosion and encroaching vegetation. These aren't dwarven, Albedo observed, examining the worn symbols etched along the edges. The craftsmanship is different. They're older, Naruto said, kneeling to trace one symbol with his finger. Much older. I've seen similar markings in the void, fragments of forgotten civilizations. Shultir sniffed the air delicately. No recent disturbances. Whatever built these has been gone for millennia. Steps led to a narrow cleft in the mountainside, barely wide enough for one person to pass through at a time. Beyond lay darkness, the passage extending deep into the mountain's heart. I'll go first, Naruto offered, creating a small flame of chakra in his palm to light the way. Unnecessary, Shultir replied with a hint of smugness. She gestured, and several floating orbs of light materialized around them. Some of us don't require crude physical illumination. The passage wound downward in a gentle spiral, occasionally opening into larger chambers before narrowing again. The architecture became more pronounced the deeper they went. Walls transformed from rough-hewn stone to precisely fitted blocks inscribed with the same strange symbols they'd seen outside. What do these say? Albedo asked as they passed through a particularly ornate archway. Naruto studied the markings, surprised to find he could almost understand them. Something about Guardians of the Threshold. The translation isn't clear, but it's warning about crossing between worlds. A civilization that knew about dimensional travel, Shultir mused. Interesting that we've found no record of them in Nazarik's archives. Some knowledge is intentionally forgotten, Albedo replied cryptically. The passage finally opened into a vast underground chamber, so large that Shultir's light orbs couldn't illuminate its furthest reaches. Massive stone columns supported the ceiling, each carved to resemble humanoid figures with their arms raised upward. A central platform dominated the space, surrounded by concentric circles etched into the floor. Naruto felt the dimensional distortion intensify as they approached the platform. The barriers are extremely thin here, he warned. Be careful. A significant energy discharge could tear them completely. At the center of the platform stood a raised dais, and upon it, embedded in stone, was a slender obsidian dagger. Its blade glinted with an inner light that shifted between violet and black, eerily similar to the energy that now coursed through Naruto's veins. The void needle, Albedo breathed, her usual composure momentarily slipping to reveal genuine awe. As they stepped onto the platform, the concentric circles around them began to glow with a faint blue light. Symbols appeared within the circles, rotating slowly as though activating some ancient mechanism. This is a dimensional junction point, Naruto realized, sensing the converging energies. A place where multiple realities touch. Shultir moved toward the dagger, but Naruto caught her arm. Wait, there are safeguards. The vampire looked down at his hand on her arm with disdain, but didn't pull away. What kind of safeguards? The kind designed to prevent dimensional rifts, Naruto explained, releasing her once she'd stopped. This place was built to maintain barriers between worlds, not break them. The dagger is part of that system. Albedo approached the dais cautiously. Removing it could destabilize the barriers further. Possibly, Naruto admitted, or it could be designed to be used elsewhere. I need to understand the mechanism before we take it. He stepped to the edge of the platform, where the first circle of symbols glowed brightest. Kneeling, he placed his palm against one of the symbols, channeling a tiny amount of void energy into it. The symbol responded, brightening and shifting to a violet hue that matched the energy in his veins. These aren't just warnings, he murmured. They're instructions. One by one, Naruto activated the symbols, reading their purpose through the resonance with his own power. The concentric circles began to rotate in alternating directions, the speed increasing gradually. What are you doing? Albedo demanded, her and moving to the axe on her back as the chamber began to vibrate around them. Communicating with the system, Naruto replied, his eyes now glowing with the same violet light as the activated symbols. It recognizes the Abyss Walker energy. It was built by them, or for them. The dais holding the dagger rose higher, the stone around the blade cracking and falling away. The void needle hovered in midair, spinning slowly. It's keyed to respond to my powers, Naruto explained, approaching the floating dagger. It's a tool specifically for Abyss Walkers to repair dimensional tears. He reached for the dagger. But before his fingers could close around it, the chamber shuddered violently. Cracks appeared in several columns, dust and stone fragments raining from above. What's happening? Shultir demanded, her parasol transforming into a fearsome lance. Someone else is accessing the system, Naruto said, his expression darkening. Someone with powers similar to mine. A dimensional rift or open on the far side of the chamber, not the controlled portal that Naruto could create, but a jagged tear in reality that pulsed with chaotic energy. Through it stepped a figure Naruto recognized immediately, despite the changes in his appearance. Sasuke, he breathed. The last Uchiha stood before them, his form wreathed in darkness that seemed to absorb the light around him. Like Naruto, veins of energy pulsed beneath his skin. But where Naruto's glowed violet, Sasuke's burned a deep crimson. His Sharingan had transformed as well, the familiar pattern now overlaid with symbols similar to those on the chamber floor. Naruto, Sasuke acknowledged coolly, I should have known you'd be involved when I sensed an Abyss Walker's energy. Albedo and Shultir moved into defensive positions, flanking Naruto. You know this intruder? Albedo asked, her voice hard. He's from my world, Naruto replied, never taking his eyes off Sasuke. A friend, once. Sasuke's lips curved in a humorless smile. Still clinging to that delusion. Even after everything that's happened. How did you get here, Sasuke? Naruto demanded. What happened to you? The same thing that happened to you, apparently. Sasuke gestured to the energy coursing through his body. A gift from the void. Though I embraced mine rather than fighting it. He walked forward, his movements unnaturally smooth, as though he were gliding rather than stepping. The shadows around him writhed like living things, occasionally forming shapes that disappeared too quickly to identify. When you disappeared from Konoha, the barriers between worlds weakened further. Sasuke continued. Another crystal entity appeared, smaller than the first, but enough to change me as you were changed. The Void Harvesters are targeting our world specifically, Naruto realized. They're targeting all worlds, Sasuke corrected. Ours simply happened to be next in their path. But unlike you, I saw the opportunity this presented. He raised his hand, and crimson energy gathered in his palm, forming a distorted version of the Chidori. The power to move between dimensions at will. To access realities beyond our own. To transcend the limitations of our world. At what cost? Naruto challenged. These dimensional tiers are destroying the barriers between worlds. If they collapse completely, everything, every world, could be consumed by the void. Sasuke's expression remained impassive. Sometimes destruction precedes necessary rebirth. His gaze shifted to the floating dagger. The Void Needle, one of 3 artifacts created by the FIRST Abyss Walkers to maintain the cosmic balance. With it, one could theoretically repair the barriers, or reshape them entirely. Step away from the artifact, Albedo commanded, her axe now in hand. You trespass on matters beyond your concern. Sasuke regarded her with mild interest. A demon guardian. This world has interesting defenders. His eyes narrowed as he studied her more closely. Though, your existence is partially artificial, isn't it? Created to serve rather than born to choose. Albedo's wings flared in anger. You know nothing of me, interloper. I know enough, Sasuke replied. I can see the programming in your aura, the constraints placed upon your will. He turned back to Naruto. You've found yourself interesting allies, though I question whether they follow you by choice or command. Enough talk, Shultir interrupted, her patience visibly exhausted. Lord Ains ordered us to retrieve the artifact, not engage in philosophical debates with interdimensional vagabonds. She lunged forward, her lance aimed at Sasuke's heart. He didn't attempt to dodge. Instead, the shadows around him solidified, catching the weapon inches from his chest. Shultir's eyes widened in surprise as her lance was held immobile by what appeared to be hands formed from living darkness. Interesting, Sasuke commented. You're stronger than you look. But physical power means little against void manipulation. The shadows constricted around Shultir's lance, crushing part of the shaft before she could pull it free. She jumped backward, hissing in frustration as her weapon reformed. Shultir, wait, Naruto cautioned. He's not like the void creatures we fought before. He has a Sharingan enhanced by Abyss Walker powers. He can predict and counter physical attacks almost instantly. Then we change strategies, Albedo decided. She raised her hand, and waves of dark energy rolled outward, distorting the space around Sasuke. He countered with his own spatial manipulation, the sea. Rimson energy from his body creating a bubble of altered reality that neutralized Albedo's attack. The collision of their powers sent ripples through the chamber, widening the cracks in the columns and floor. Stop, Naruto shouted. The dimensional barriers here are already weak. If we keep fighting, we could tear them completely. As if to emphasize his point, small rifts began opening around the chamber, flickering into existence and then closing again like wounds trying to heal themselves. Through one such momentary opening, Naruto caught a glimpse of Konoha, the Hokage monument clear against a blue sky. Home, he whispered. Distracted by the sight, Sasuke noticed his reaction and smiled thinly. You still think of it as home, even after they failed to protect you. Even knowing what I know now. What are you talking about? Naruto demanded. The truth about the Void Harvesters, Sasuke replied. They didn't appear in our world by chance, Naruto. They were summoned by the same peep. Who have manipulated both our lives from the beginning. Before Naruto could respond, Sasuke made his move. With blinding speed, he darted toward the floating dagger, crimson energy trailing from his fingers. Naruto reacted instantly, creating a portal that deposited him directly in front of the Void Needle. Their hands closed around the artifact simultaneously. The moment they touched it, the dagger pulsed with blinding light. Energy surged through both Abyss Walkers, their competing powers, violet and crimson, swirling around the blade in violent opposition. The chamber shook more violently, columns beginning to collapse as reality itself strained under the pressure of their conflict. Let go, Sasuke, Naruto shouted over the rumbling chaos. You'll bring this whole place down on us. Quote, always so concerned with saving everyone, Sasuke replied, his grip tightening. Some things are worth sacrificing for greater power. The dagger began to crack under the strain of their opposing energies. Naruto felt it weakening. the ancient material unable to withstand the conflict between two Abyss Walkers. Albedo appeared beside them, her axe swinging toward Sasuke's arm. "Release it, intruder." Sasuke's free hand shot out, catching Albedo's wrist before the axe could connect. His eyes bored into hers, the enhanced Sharingan spinning hypnotically. "I wonder," he said softly, "if your Tor truly understood what he made when he formed you. There's something in you that rebels against your programming, a desire for self-determination that wasn't intended." Albedo's expression flickered with momentary confusion, her golden eyes losing focus as Sasuke's genjutsu attempted to take hold. Naruto recognized the technique. Enhanced by void energy, Sasuke was trying to influence her mind directly. "Albedo," Naruto called, unable to release the dagger without surrendering it to Sasuke. "Don't listen to him." Her wings trembled as she fought against the mental intrusion. "I serve only Lord Ains," she said, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. "Do you?" Sasuke pressed. "Or is that simply what you were told to believe? What if your loyalty is just another chain binding you?" Something in Albedo snapped. With a cry of rage, she broke free of Sasuke's grip, her wings flaring wide as she channeled her power. "My devotion is my choice." The force of her outburst created a shish, a quave that sent Sasuke staggering backward. In that moment of distraction, Naruto poured his energy into the dagger, wresting it from Sasuke's grasp. The sudden release of tension caused the artifact to flare with power, temporarily blinding everyone in the chamber. When Naruto's vision cleared, he found himself holding the void needle alone. Sasuke had been thrown across the chamber, though he was already regaining his footing. Around them, the ruins were collapsing in earnest, massive blocks of stone falling from the ceiling. "We need to leave," Shultir called, dispatching a shadow demon that had been crushed by falling debris. "This entire complex is coming down." Sasuke rose to his feet, dark energy swirling around him. "This isn't over, Naruto. There are 2 more artifacts, and I will find them before you do." His gaze shifted to Albedo. "Consider what I said, Guardian. Some loyalties are worth questioning." With that, he tore open another dimensional rift and stepped through, the portal closing behind him just as a massive column crashed down on the spot where he had stood. "We need to go," Naruto urged, grabbing Albedo's arm. She seemed momentarily dazed, still processing Sasuke's words. Shultir was already casting a teleportation spell, a glowing circle forming around them. "Hold on to me," she commanded. As the chamber collapsed around them, Naruto maintained his grip on both the dagger and Albedo. The teleportation activated just as the ceiling gave way completely, whisking them back to the safety of Nazarick in a flash of magical energy. They materialized in Nazarick's throne room, where Ains waited with Demiurge and several other guardians. The skeletal overlord rose from his throne as they appeared, his glowing eye sockets fixed on the dagger in Naruto's hand. "You were successful," he observed, though it seems not without complication. Naruto nodded grimly, still supporting Albedo who had yet to fully recover from Sasuke's mental assault. "We got the void needle. But we weren't the only ones looking for it." He quickly explained about Sasuke's appearance and his claims about the other artifacts. Ains listened in silence, his bony fingers steepled before him. "Another Abyss Walker," the Overlord mused when Naruto finished. "And from your world. This complicates matters significantly." "He's powerful," Naruto admitted. "Maybe more so than me. He's embraced the void energy completely, where I've been trying to control it." "And what of these other artifacts he mentioned?" Demiurge asked. "If they exist, we need to find them before Sasuke does," Naruto replied. "The void needle alone isn't enough to repair the barriers. Based on what I sensed when I held it, it's meant to work in conjunction with other tools." Ains nodded slowly. "I will consult the archives again. If legends speak of 3 artifacts, there may be clues to the locations of the other 2. His gaze shifted to Albedo, who had finally straightened, though her usual poise seemed diminished. "Albedo, you appear troubled. What transpired in the ruins?" She hesitated, a rare occurrence for the normally decisive guardian. "The intruder, Sasuke, attempted to influence my mind with his ocular abilities. I resisted. He tried to make her question her loyalty to you," Naruto added, earning a sharp look from Albedo. "I see," Ains replied, his tone revealing nothing of his thoughts. Demiurge, escort Albedo to her quarters. She should rest and recover from this mental assault. That isn't necessary, Lord Ains, Albedo protested. I am perfectly capable, it was not a suggestion. Ains interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. Even the strongest mind requires time to process such intrusions. Reluctantly, Albedo bowed and departed with Demiurge. As they left, Naruto thought he saw her glance back at him, her golden eyes troubled in a way he hadn't seen before. Once they were gone, Ains turned his attention to the void needle. May I? He asked, extending a skeletal hand. Naruto passed him the dagger, watching carefully as the Overlord examined it. Unlike when he and Sasuke had touched it simultaneously, the artifact remained dormant in Ains's grasp. Fascinating, the skeleton murmured. I can sense its power, yet it does not respond to me as it did to you. It's designed for Abyss Walkers, Naruto explained. When I touched it, I could almost understand its purpose instinctively. It's meant to seal rifts in reality, like stitching a wound closed. Then you must learn to use it properly, Ains decided, returning the dagger. Before your counterpart finds the remaining artifacts. Naruto accepted the blade, feeling its energy resonate with his own. What Sasuke said about the void harvesters being summoned to our world, could that be true? Ains was silent for a moment, his eternal grin revealing nothing of his thoughts. Many seek power without understanding its cost, he finally said. It would not be the first time ambitious fools have tampered with forces beyond their comprehension. In my world, that would mean someone high in Konoha's leadership, Naruto said, his expression darkening. Someone with access to forbidden jutsu and ancient knowledge. Focus on what you can change, not what you cannot verify, Ains advised. Master the artifact you have. Prepare for the challenges ahead. Leave investigations of your world for when you can return to it. With that, the skeletal overlord dismissed him, turning his attention to reports from other guardians. Naruto departed the throne room, the void needle tucked securely in his belt. Despite his fatigue, he found himself wandering not toward his assigned quarters but to the 6th floor's artificial forest. He needed to think, and somehow the simulated nature reminded him enough of home to clear his mind. Night had fallen on the 6th floor, or rather, the artificial sky had shifted to its nocturnal cycle, when Naruto sensed another presence approaching. He sat cross-legged on a large rock overlooking the forested valley, the void needle laid across his knees as he studied its intricate engravings. You should be resting, came Albedo's voice from behind him. Naruto didn't turn, so should you. Sasuke's mental techniques aren't easy to shake off. She moved to stand beside his rock, her white dress glowing faintly in the artificial moonlight. Her wings were tucked close to her body, and she had removed her horned headpiece, allowing her raven hair to fall freely around her shoulders. My mind is my own again, she stated, though something in her tone suggested uncertainty. Lord Ains has verified I suffered no lasting damage. Naruto glanced at her. That's not the same as being okay. Albedo's golden eyes narrowed slightly. You presume much about my mental state. Not presuming, Naruto replied with a small shrug. Just recognizing something I've seen before. Sasuke's genjutsu doesn't just control minds, it finds doubts and amplifies them. A long silence followed his statement. Albedo's gaze fixed on the distant trees, her perfect features unreadable in the soft light. He said my loyalty was programmed, she finally said, her voice barely audible. That my devotion to Lord Ains was not my choice. Naruto picked up the void needle, turning it in his hands. Is it true? Another silence, longer this time. I was created by the supreme beings. Albedo eventually continued. My nature, my purpose, my very essence was defined by them. My loyalty to Ains Ulgaon is fundamental to my existence. That doesn't answer my question, Naruto observed. Albedo's wings rustled with irritation. What would you have me say? That I question the core of my being. That I wonder if my most precious emotion is merely artificial. I'd have you say whatever you truly think. Naruto replied, meeting her gaze directly. Not what you think you should say. The honesty in his blue eyes seemed to disarm her somewhat. Albedo sighed, a surprisingly human gesture from the usually composed guardian. Lord Ains altered my settings before the Great Tomb was transported to this world, she admitted. The specifics of the change are personal. But it has led me to wonder, at times, where the programming ends and I begin. Naruto nodded, understanding more than she might have expected. I was created as a vessel for the nine-tailed fox, he said. From the day I was born, people saw me as a container, a weapon, a tool, not a person. It took years for me to understand that I could choose my own path, regardless of what I was made to be. He held up the void needle, its surface catching the moonlight. These artifacts weren't just tools for maintaining reality. They were symbols of choice, reminders that even beings who walk between worlds must decide which path to follow. And what path have you chosen? Albedo asked, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. To protect, Naruto answered without hesitation. My friends, my home, and now this world too. Because they're connected, and because it's who I am, not who anyone made me to be. Albedo's gaze lingered on him, something unreadable in her golden eyes. You speak with remarkable conviction for someone lost between dimensions. Naruto smiled slightly. Being lost doesn't mean being without purpose. To his surprise, Albedo sat on the rock beside him, her wings adjusting to accommodate the position. Your counterpart, Sasuke. He has chosen a different path. Sasuke has always been drawn to power, Naruto explained. He's suffered losses that left him vulnerable to darkness. If the void energy is influencing him the way I think it is, he's in danger of losing himself completely. Yet you still consider him a friend. I consider him someone worth saving, Naruto clarified. There's a difference. Albedo seemed to contemplate this distinction. In Nazarick, loyalty is absolute. One either serves the supreme beings or is an enemy to be eliminated. There is no middle ground. No redemption for traitors. Sounds lonely, Naruto commented. It is efficient, Albedo replied, though her tone lacked conviction. They sat in silence for a while, watching the artificial stars wheeling overhead. Despite knowing they were magical constructs rather than actual celestial bodies, Naruto found them comforting, points of light in the darkness, just like at home. Tom, Oro, I'll begin training with the void needle, he said eventually. Learning how to use it properly will be essential for when we find the other artifacts. When we find them? Albedo questioned, arching a perfect eyebrow. Naruto met her gaze directly. Unless you'd rather not work with me anymore. Something flickered in her golden eyes, amusement, perhaps, or surprise at his directness. Lore, D. Ains has assigned me as your partner in this endeavor. I follow his will, just his will, Naruto pressed. Albedo stood abruptly, her wings flaring slightly. It is late, you should rest before tomorrow's training. As she turned to leave, Naruto called after her. You know what I realized today, Albedo. When you broke free of Sasuke's genjutsu. She paused, not turning back. You said, my devotion is my choice, Naruto continued. Not, my programming, or, my settings, your choice. Whatever was done to create you, that moment was all you. Albedo remained still for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried an emotion Naruto couldn't quite identify. Perhaps there are some choices even we are permitted to make, she said softly before walking away, her white dress disappearing among the trees. Naruto watched her go, the void needle warm in his hand as though responding to the conversation. Whatever came next in their search for the artifacts, something had changed between them, a shift as subtle yet significant as the weakening barriers between worlds. The training arena echoed with the clash of weapons and the hum of energy. Naruto faced off against Mare, the timid male dark elf whose appearance belied his tremendous magical power. Around them, the air shimmered with protective barriers Ains had established to contain their practice session. Try again, Mare encouraged, his mismatched eyes watching carefully as Naruto manipulated the void needle. The rift is still unstable. Before them hovered a small dimensional tear Mare had created with his mag. I see, a controlled anomaly for Naruto to practice sealing. The void needle glowed in Naruto's hand as he channeled energy through it, attempting to stitch the edges of reality back together. It resists conventional approaches, Naruto muttered, adjusting his technique. The dagger seemed to have a will of its own, pulling toward certain points around the rift rather than where Naruto tried to direct it. Maybe don't fight its movement, Mare suggested. The artifact might understand the patterns better than we do. Naruto nodded, relaxing his control and allowing the void needle to guide his hand. The dagger traced an intricate pattern around the rift, violet energy trailing from its tip like luminous thread. Where the energy touched the edges of the tear, reality seemed to knit itself back together. It's working, Naruto realized, following the dagger's lead. It's not about forcing the rift closed, it's about restoring the natural pattern of reality around it. Mare clapped his hands excitedly. Why, you're getting it. The barriers want to be whole. You're just helping them remember their proper form. With a final flourish, the void needle sealed the last portion of the rift. The dimensional tear closed completely. Reality smoothing over as though it had never been damaged. Well done, came Ains's voice from the sidelines. The skeletal overlord had been observing silently, his glowing eyes missing nothing. Your control improves with each attempt. Naruto lowered the dagger, wiping sweat from his brow. They had been training for hours, and while progress was evident, Master the artifact's capabilities was proving challenging. It's not just a tool, he explained, examining the blade. It's almost alive in some way, like it remembers how reality should be structured. Artifacts of such power often develop a form of sentience, Ains agreed. The void needle has existed since the earliest days of the cosmos. It has witnessed countless cycles of creation and destruction. Mare created another small rift. This one more complex than the last. Try this one. It has multiple layers of distortion. Naruto approached the new tear, studying its structure before attempting to seal it. As he worked, Albedo entered the arena, her armor gleaming as though freshly polished. She had been absent during the morning's training sessions, attending to other duties for Ains. Lord Ains, she greeted with a deep bow. The scouts have returned with information about the second artifact. Naruto's concentration broke, the void needle's energy flickering as his attention divided. The rift he'd been sealing pulsed dangerously, expanding slightly before he managed to stabilize it again. Focus, Naruto, Ains cautioned. Complete your current task before attending to new information. With effort, Naruto returned his full attention to the rift, allowing the void needle to guide his movements as he traced the complex patterns needed to seal the multilayered tear. When the final thread of energy connected, the rift closed with a soft chime, like crystal touched by light. Good, Ains nodded approvingly. You're learning to work with the artifact rather than imposing your will upon it. Naruto sheathed the dagger at his hip, turning to Albedo. What did the scouts find? She glanced at Ains, who nodded permission for her to share the information. The second artifact, the Void Mirror, has been located in the slain theocracy. Specifically, within their central cathedral in the capital city. The theocracy, Naruto frowned. The same people who tried to summon a void harvester. The very same, Ains confirmed, which suggests they have been researching dimensional manipulation for some time. Given their hostility toward non-humans, infiltrating their capital will be challenging, Albedo continued. They have significantly increased security since their failed ritual, and their black scripture remains active in the field. Naruto considered this information. What does the Void Mirror do? Is it similar to the needle? According to our research, Ains replied, the mirror allows its user to view distant realms without physically traveling to them. In the hands of an abyss walker, it could potentially locate weaknesses in dimensional barriers across multiple worlds simultaneously. So with the needle to repair rifts and the mirror to find them. Naruto began. One could systematically strengthen reality throughout the cosmos, Ains finished. A powerful combination indeed. And the third artifact? Naruto asked. The Void Key, Albedo answered. Its location remains unknown, though legends suggest it lies beyond the Veil of Death, where time flows backward. Mare shivered slightly. Gee, that sounds ominous. One challenge at a time, Ains decided. The Void Mirror must be our priority, especially given the theocracy's involvement. If they learn to use it, even partially, they could cause incalculable damage to dimensional stability. Or try to control what comes through. Naruto added grimly, remembering their previous attempt. Ains turned to Albedo. Prepare a small infiltration team. This mission requires subtlety rather than force. Naruto's abilities will be essential, but he cannot be easily disguised among humans who actively hunt non-humans. I could transform, Naruto offered. My transformation jutsu is perfect. It's not an illusion but a physical change. Even so, The theocracy employs magical detection methods specifically designed to reveal true natures, Ains cautioned. We must approach this methodically. They spent the next hour discussing strategy, with Demiurge joining them to offer his tactical insights. The plan that emerged was complex but elegant. A small team would infiltrate the theocracy capital during their upcoming religious festival, when the streets would be crowded and security focused on the public celebrations rather than potential infiltrators. As the meeting concluded, Ains assigned specific roles to each participant. Naruto and Albedo will retrieve the mirror itself. Shultir and Demiurge will create diversions if necessary. Mare will maintain a teleportation circle for emergency extraction. When do we leave? Naruto asked. The festival begins in 3 days, Ains replied. Until then, continue your training with the Void Needle. Its mastery may prove crucial if you encounter dimensional anomalies in the theocracy. With that, the skeletal overlord departed, Demiurge and Mare following close behind. Albedo remained, her golden eyes studying Naruto thoughtfully. You should rest, she suggested. You've been training since dawn. Naruto stretched, feeling the fatigue in his muscles. Probably a good idea, though I was hoping to try a few more complex seals before ending for the day. There will be time tomorrow, Albedo replied. Exhausting yourself serves no purpose. As they walked from the arena together, Naruto noticed a subtle change in Albedo's demeanor. Since their conversation by the lake, she had been less overtly hostile, her usual disdain replaced by something closer to professional respect. How are you feeling? He asked as they reached the corridor leading to their respective quarters. After what happened with Sasuke, I mean. Albedo's wings shifted slightly, a tell Naruto had come to recognize as discomfort. My mind is clear. His attempt to influence me failed. That's not what I asked, Naruto pointed out gently. She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. Why do you persist in these inquiries about my emotional state? What purpose does it serve? Because we're partners in this, Naruto answered simply. And because I care about the people I work with. Care, Albedo repeated, as though testing an unfamiliar concept. You barely know me. I know enough, Naruto said with a slight smile. I know you're fiercely protective of Nazarick. I know you value strength and competence. I know you're struggling with K's Tions about your own autonomy that you've never had to face before. Albedo's expression hardened. You presume too much. Maybe, Naruto conceded, but I also know what it's like to question your nature, to wonder if you're merely what others created you to be, or something more. For a moment, Albedo's perfect composure slipped, revealing a vulnerability she rarely showed. And what conclusion did you reach? That we're all shaped by forces beyond our control, Naruto replied, his blue eyes meeting her golden ones directly. But what matters is what we choose to do with what we've been given. Albedo considered his words, her gaze unreadable. You speak as though choice is universal. Some of us were created with more specific parameters. And yet you broke through Sasuke's genjutsu by asserting your own will. Naruto reminded her, that wasn't programming, that was you. Before she could respond, a tremor ran through the corridor. The walls shimmered briefly, reality itself seeming to flutter like fabric in a breeze. Naruto's hand went immediately to the Void Needle, while Albedo's wings flared in alarm. What was that? She demanded. A dimensional fluctuation, Naruto answered. The violet energy beneath his skin pulsing in response. Stronger than the others we've felt. Another tremor followed, more intense than the first. The air between them rippled, and for a brief moment, a rift began to form. Not a controlled portal but a jagged tear in the fabric of reality. Without hesitation, Naruto drew the Void Needle, channeling energy through it as he'd practiced. The dagger responded instantly, guiding his hand in the now familiar pattern needed to seal dimensional breaches. The emerging rift resisted, pulsing with chaotic energy, but Naruto persisted, focusing his will through the artifact. Something's forcing it open from the other side, he grunted, fighting against the pressure. Something powerful. Albedo moved to his side, placing her hand on his shoulder. Use my energy as before, she offered. Channel it through your techniques. Naruto nodded, accepting her power and merging it with his own. Together, they forced the rift to contract, the EDG's of reality knitting back together under the Void Needle's influence. With a final surge of combined energy, the tear sealed completely, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air that quickly faded. That was too close, Naruto said, lowering the dagger. The barriers are weakening faster than we thought. Could it be your counterpart? Albedo asked. Sasuke. Naruto shook his head. This felt different. Older, hungrier. More like the Void Lord we faced, but much stronger. We should inform Lord Ains immediately, Albedo decided, already turning toward the throne room. As they hurried through Nazarik's corridors, more tremors shook the structure. Small rifts appeared and disappeared randomly, each lasting only seconds before collapsing naturally. The entire tomb seemed to vibrate with dimensional instability. They found Ains already aware of the situation, surrounded by guardians in the throne room. A large magical projection hovered in the center of the chamber, showing a map of the surrounding territories with glowing points indicating dimensional disturbances. The pattern is clear, Demiurge was explaining as they entered. The instabilities are increasing in both frequency and intensity, forming a spiral pattern centered approximately 50 kilometers northeast of Nazarik. The Great Forest of Tob, Ains identified the location. Sparsely inhabited, primarily by magical beasts and a few goblin tribes. Naruto approached the projection, studying the pattern. It's deliberate, he realized. These aren't random fluctuations, they're being generated systematically. Song. E1 or something is testing the barriers, looking for weak points. The Void Harvesters, Albedo suggested. Possibly, Naruto agreed. Or someone trying to summon them again. Ains's glowing eyes fixed on him. You've mastered the Void Needle enough to investigate safely. Naruto nodded. I can seal smaller rifts consistently now. Anything larger would require more power, but I should be able to contain the situation long enough to gather information. Then you and Albedo will investigate immediately, Ains decided. This takes priority over preparation for the Theocracy mission. If these disturbances continue to escalate, there may not be a world left to save artifacts for. Within minutes, they were equipped and ready. Albedo had donned her full battle armor, while Naruto carried the Void Needle prominently at his hip. Shultir created a gate spell for them, opening a portal directly to the edge of the affected area. Be cautious, Ains warned before they departed. If the situation exceeds your ability to contain, retreat immediately. No artifact is worth sacrificing either of you. Albedo bowed deeply. We will not fail you, Lord Ains. Naruto simply nodded, his expression determined as he stepped through the portal with Albedo close behind. The Great Forest of Tob stretched before them, ancient trees reaching toward a sky that seemed unnaturally dark despite it being midday. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy that made Naruto's skin prickle. Violet light pulsed beneath his skin more prominently than usual, responding to the dimensional disturbances permeating the area. The epicenter should be 2 kilometers in that direction, Albedo said, pointing deeper into the forest. They moved swiftly through the underbrush, Naruto occasionally creating small L portals to bypass dense thickets or natural obstacles. As they progressed, the signs of dimensional instability became increasingly obvious, plants growing in impossible configurations, small animals frozen in mid-movement as though time itself had stopped around them, patches of forest where colors were inverted or gravity seemed to flow sideways. Reality is coming apart at the seams, Naruto observed grimly. Whatever's causing this has been working at it for some time. Albedo nodded, her golden eyes scanning their surroundings warily. The indigenous creatures have fled. Even magical beasts know to avoid dimensional anomalies. They crested a small hill and stopped abruptly at the site below. A massive clearing had formed in the center of the forest, not natural, but carved out by some tremendous force. Trees lay flattened in a perfect circle, their trunks pointing outward from the center like spokes on a wheel. At the epicenter floated a crystalline object similar to the one that had transformed Naruto in Konoha. Though significantly larger, unlike that entity, however, this one pulsed with sickly green light rather than violet. Around it hovered what appeared to be humans in elaborate robes. Their arms raised as they chanted in unison. The Theocracy again, Albedo hissed, her wings bristling with anger. They learned nothing from their previous failure. Naruto studied the scene carefully. That's not a Void Harvester, he said. At least, not exactly. It's corrupted somehow. The crystalline entity was indeed malformed, its geometric perfection marred by asym. Trickle growths and fractures that leaked the green energy. The humans surrounding it weren't controlling it so much as feeding it. Channels of magical energy flowed from their bodies into the crystal, causing it to expand gradually. They're sacrificing their own life force, Naruto realized with horror. Willingly. Fanaticism knows no bounds, Albedo replied coldly. But what are they trying to accomplish? As if in answer, the crystal pulsed more intensely, and a rift began to form above it, far larger than any they had encountered previously. Through the tear, Naruto glimpsed something massive moving in the darkness beyond, a presence so vast it defied comprehension, its form shifting constantly as though reality itself couldn't decide how to perceive it. A greater void entity, Naruto breathed. Recognition dawning from knowledge he shouldn't possess, memories or instincts that came with his transformation. They're trying to summon one of the void's elder beings. To what purpose? Albedo demanded. Such a creature would consume them along with everything else. Not if they've found a way to bind it. Naruto pointed to intricate patterns carved into the ground around the ritual. L-site. Symbols similar to those they'd found in the chamber of the Void Needle, but corrupted, inverted. They're using perverted versions of Abyss Walker techniques. The rift expanded further, the entity beyond pushing against the thinning barrier between dimensions. The theocracy members intensified their chanting, their bodies beginning to wither visibly as more of their life energy transferred to the crystal. We need to stop them, Naruto decided, drawing the Void Needle. Before that thing breaks through completely. Albedo nodded, her axe materializing in her hand. Direct approach or subterfuge. Naruto considered the options quickly. They're too focused on their ritual to have strong perimeter defenses. We go in fast, disrupt the ceremony, then deal with the rift. Without waiting for acknowledgement, he created a portal directly to the edge of the ritual site. They stepped through, emerging behind the circle of chanters. Immediately, alarm wards activated, magical barriers flaring to life around the site. Intruders, called one of the robed figures, turning from the ritual. His face was gaunt, skin stretched tight over his skull from the life force he'd already sacrificed. Protect the summoning. Half the cultists broke formation to confront them, while the others maintained the ritual, their chanting growing more urgent. The rift above pulsed dangerously, expanding another meter in diameter. Albedo moved with devastating efficiency, her axe cleaving through the first wave of defenders before they could complete their attack spells. Naruto created shadow clones that scattered throughout the ritual site, targeting the carved symbols on the ground with explosive tags. The binding pattern must be broken, he called to Albedo, otherwise even if we stop the summoning, the weakness they've created will remain. She nodded in understanding, changing her attack pattern to target the elaborate carvings rather than the cultists themselves. The theocracy members fought desperately to protect their work, magical barriers and offensive spells flying in all directions. Naruto found himself confronted by a familiar face, the silver-haired woman from their previous encounter, though now much changed. Her once vibrant heterochromatic eyes had dulled, her skin sallow and hanging loosely on her frame. She had sacrificed much of herself to the ritual, yet still moved with dangerous precision. You again, she said, her voice raspy. The Dimensional Walker, your interference is futile. The Great Void Sovereign comes at our call. You're killing yourselves for nothing, Naruto countered. Dodging a beam of destructive energy she launched from her palm. Whatever bargain you think you've made, entities from the void don't honor agreements. She laughed, the sound dry and brittle. We seek no bargain. We seek transcendence. The Sovereign devours worlds, yes, but those who serve as its heralds are transformed, elevated beyond mortal limitations. Like this, Naruto created a small rift, allowing the violet energy of his Abyss Walker powers to manifest visibly. I've seen what lies between dimensions. There's no transcendence there, only hunger and chaos. The woman's eyes widened slightly. You've been touched by a lesser harvester. The Sovereign offers far greater gifts. While they spoke, Naruto's clones had systematically destroyed nearly half the binding patterns. The ritual faltered, the rift above fluctuating as its stability decreased. The remaining cultists redoubled their efforts, several collapsing entirely as they poured their remaining life force into maintaining the summoning. Albedo fought her way toward the central crystal, her armor splattered with blood, her wings flared wide in battle fury. As she approached, the crystal pulsed defensively. sending out waves of sickly green energy that corroded everything they touched. Naruto, she called. The crystal resists physical attacks. He nodded, engaging the silver-haired Wong, and with a series of swift taijutsu strikes that forced her backward. Once he'd created enough distance, he formed a Rasengan infused with void energy and charged directly at the crystal. No, the woman screamed, abandoning all defense to intercept him. The connection must be maintained. Naruto's Rasengan struck the crystal just as the woman collided with him. The combined impact sent all three, Naruto, the woman, and the crystal, tumbling toward the center of the ritual site. The crystal cracked under the force of the void-enhanced Rasengan, green energy spilling out like toxic blood. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The rift above them expanded explosively, the entity beyond pushing more forcefully against the weakened barriers. Tentacles of darkness extended through the opening, each longer than a man was tall. Writhing with palpable hunger, the sovereign comes. The remaining cultists cried in unison, their voices blending into an eerie harmony. Praise be the void. Naruto rolled to his feet, the void needle already in his hand. The artifact pulsed urgently, almost pulling him toward the expanding rift. Albedo, he called, I need to seal the rift before that thing gets through completely. Keep the cultists off me. She nodded grimly, positioning herself between him and the remaining theocracy members. Make it quick. Those tentacles look caustic. Indeed. The dark appendages touched the ground. Reality itself seemed to dissolve, leaving behind patches of nothingness, not holes, but complete absence, as though portions of the world had been erased from existence. Naruto approached the rift, channeling energy through the void needle. The artifact responded eagerly, guiding his movements as he began tracing the complex patterns needed to seal such a massive tear. The void energy in his veins burned like fire as he pushed his power to its limits. It's too large, he realized with growing alarm. I can't generate enough power to seal it completely. The rift continued to expand, more tentacles emerging with each passing second. Beyond them, something massive shifted in the darkness, a presence so vast it defied comprehension, its very existence an affront to ordered reality. Suddenly, Albedo was at his side, her hand gripping his shoulder. Use my power, she commanded. As before, Naruto nodded gratefully, establishing the connection between them. Albedo's energy flowed into him, amplifying his own, the combined force channeling through the void needle. The artifact blazed with light, drawing patterns in the air that burned themselves into reality. Even with their combined power, the rift resisted closure. The entity beyond sensed their efforts and fought back, its will pressing against theirs with cosmic force. It's not enough, Naruto grunted, sweat pouring down his face as he struggled to maintain the sealing technique. Then we need more, came a familiar voice. Naruto turned in shock to see Sasuke standing several yards away, his hand extended toward them. Crimson energy pulsed beneath his skin, his enhanced Sharingan spinning as he analyzed the situation. Sasuke, Naruto exclaimed, what are you doing here? Feeling the barriers collapse, same as you. Sasuke replied tersely, whatever our differences, neither of us wants that thing breaking through completely. Albedo bristled at the newcomer. Why should we trust you? You shouldn't, Sasuke answered bluntly, but right now, you need me. 3 Abyss Walkers might generate enough power to seal a rift this size. Another tentacle emerged from the rift, lashing out toward them. Sasuke created a shield of crimson energy that intercepted it, the void matter hissing as it made contact. We don't have time to debate, he pointed out as the shield began to crack. Naruto made his decision. Together, then, Sasuke approached, positioning himself on Naruto's other side. He placed his hand on Naruto's free shoulder, completing the circuit. Immediately, Naruto felt a surge of power unlike anything he'd experienced before. Albedo's structured, controlled energy on one side, Sasuke's wild, adaptable force on the other, both flowing through him and into the void needle. The artifact responded dramatically, blazing with tricolored light, violet, gold, and crimson intertwining in complex patterns. Naruto let the dagger guide his movements completely now, tracing symbols that sealed the rift from its edges inward. The entity beyond raged against their efforts, its tentacles thrashing wildly. One struck the ground near them, erasing a swath of reality 20 feet across. Another lashed out at the remaining cultists, who made no effort to flee. Instead, they reached toward it in ecstasy, allowing themselves to be consumed. Fanatics, Albedo spat as she watched their willing sacrifice. Slowly, inexorably, the rift began to close. The tentacles that had emerged were severed as reality reknit itself, the disconnected portions dissolving into nothingness. The presence beyond the rift howled in frustration, a sound not heard with ears but felt in the deepest recesses of the mind. With a final surge of combined power, the three of them forced the rift closed completely. The backlash sent them flying backward, landing hard on the scorched earth of the ritual site. The void needle fell from Naruto's grasp, embedding itself in the ground point first, still glowing with residual energy. For several moments, none of them moved, exhausted by the tremendous effort. Naruto recovered first, pushing himself to his feet and retrieving the dagger. Albedo rose next, her wings drooping slightly with fatigue but her stance still battle-ready as she faced Sasuke. The Uchiha remained seated on the ground, studying the aftermath of the ritual with his enhanced Sharingan. Interesting, he murmured. They almost succeeded. You call that success? Naruto demanded, gesturing to the devastation around them. Half of them were consumed, the other half died from life force depletion. And they nearly unleashed something that would have devoured this entire world. Sasuke shrugged, rising gracefully to his feet. I didn't say I approved of their methods. But their understanding of void dynamics was impressive for humans with no natural connection to the abyss. How did you know to come here? Albedo asked suspiciously, her axe still in hand. I've been tracking dimensional anomalies. Sasuke explained, looking for the artifacts, same as you. This disturbance was too large to ignore. His gaze shifted to the void needle in Naruto's hand. I see you've learned to use it. Impressive control, especially for someone still fighting against his transformation. I'm not fighting it, Naruto corrected. I'm directing it. There's a difference. Sasuke smiled thinly. Semantics. You still resist the full potential of what you could become. If becoming more powerful means ending up like that, Naruto nodded toward the empty robes where cultists had been consumed. I'll pass. Your choice, Sasuke replied with a shrug. But remember what I said about the other artifacts. The void mirror lies in the theocracy's capital, though after this, they may move it to a more secure location. You're tracking it too, Albedo observed. Of course. Though my approach will likely differ from yours, Sasuke turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Naruto. I've been back to Konoha. Naruto stiffened. What? When? Is everyone? Your friends are fine, Sasuke interrupted. Confused by your disappearance, searching for you, but unharmed. However, I discovered something interesting in the Hokage's sealed archives. What? Naruto demanded. Records of experiments with dimensional energy dating back decades, Sasuke replied. Your father was involved initially. Though he abandoned the research when he realized the dangers. Others continued in secret. Who? Naruto pressed. Sasuke's expression darkened. The roots run deep, Naruto. Deeper than you imagine. When you have the mirror, you'll be able to see for yourself. With that cryptic statement, he tore open a dimensional rift and stepped through, the portal closing behind him before either Naruto or Albedo could respond. Can we trust anything he says? Albedo asked after a moment. Naruto stared at the space where Sasuke had disappeared. About the artifacts and the dimensional threats, yes. About motives and allegiances, that's more complicated. They surveyed the devastation of the ritual site once more. Nothing remained of the corrupted crystal, it had shattered completely during their battle with the rift. The elaborate carvings had been mostly destroyed by Naruto's clones and Albedo's attacks. All that remained were scorched earth and a lingering sense of wrongness in the air. We should return to Nazarick, Albedo suggested. Lord Ains will want a full report, and our plans for the theocracy mission may need adjustment in light of these events. Naruto nodded, but didn't move immediately. Albedo, he said quietly, thank you. For trusting me enough to lend your power. Without it, we couldn't have sealed that rift. She studied him for a moment, her golden eyes unreadable. It was necessary for the mission's success. Still, Naruto pressed, it requires trust to channel your energy through someone else. Especially someone you initially considered an enemy. Albedo's wings shifted slightly, not in irritation this time, but something less defined. Perhaps I have. revised my assessment of you. Coming from her, it was practically a declaration of friendship. Naruto smiled slightly. I'll take that as a compliment. As they prepared to return to Nazarick, Naruto cast one last look at the devastated clearing. The dimensional barriers had held, barely, but the threat remained. Somewhere out in the void, entities ancient and hungry waited for their chance to break through into reality. The race to find the remaining artifacts had just become more urgent than ever. And somewhere between worlds, Sasuke pursued his own agenda, an agenda that intersected with theirs in ways Naruto couldn't yet fully comprehend. The great tomb of Nazarick hummed with preparation. 3 days had passed since the incident in the great forest of Tob, and now the infiltration of the slain theocracy capital was imminent. Naruto stood in his quarters, examining his reflection in a full-length mirror as he adjusted the disguise he would wear for the mission. Gone were his distinctive blonde hair and whisker marks, replaced by brown hair and unremarkable feet. Yours that would blend easily among the theocracy's human population. The transformation was not magical but physical, a technique from his world that altered his actual appearance rather than creating an illusion around it. A knock at his door interrupted his preparations. Enter, he called, turning from the mirror. Albedo stepped into the room, similarly disguised for the mission. Her horns and wings were absent. Her usual striking beauty muted to something more ordinary, though still attractive. She wore the simple garments of a merchant's wife, practical clothing that would attract minimal attention in the capital. The final briefing begins in 10 minutes, she informed him. Lord Ains wishes to review the extraction protocols once more. Naruto nodded, securing the void needle in a hidden sheath beneath his merchant's coat. How are you adjusting to the physical changes? He asked, noting the slight awkwardness in her posture without her wings to balance her. It is disorienting, Albedo admitted. But necessary. The theocracy's capital is perhaps the most dangerous location for non-humans on this continent. The transformation should hold indefinitely, Naruto assured her. Unlike illusion magic, it won't be detected by their wards. Together they made their way to the strategy room where Ains and the other mission participants waited. Demiurge and Shultir were also disguised as humans. Though Shultir seemed particularly displeased with her plainer appearance. This is undignified, she complained, tugging at the modest dress she wore. To think a floor guardia N would be reduced to such common appearance. The mission requires it, Demiurge reminded her smoothly. And it is temporary. Ains raised a skeletal hand for silence as Naruto and Albedo entered. Good, we are all assembled. Let us review the final plans. A magical projection appeared above the table, showing a detailed map of the theocracy capital. Certain buildings were highlighted in different colors, with the central cathedral glowing brightest. Intelligence confirms the void mirror is kept in a sealed chamber beneath the cathedral, Ains explained. Security has been increased following the failed ritual in the forest. But the annual Ascension Festival provides our best opportunity for infiltration. The cathedral will be open to worshippers throughout the day, Demiurge continued. Thousands of citizens and pilgrims will be moving through the complex, making it easier to blend in. However, the underground levels remain restricted. That's where we come in, Naruto said, studying the cathedral's layout. Albedo and I will join the worshippers, then slip away to access the lower levels. Correct. Ains nodded. Demiurge and Shultir will maintain positions in the city to create diversions if necessary. Mare has established a remote teleportation point in an abandoned building near the eastern gate for emergency extraction. What about the Black Scripture? Albedo asked. After our previous encounters, they will be alert for any intrusion. Our intelligence suggests most of their forces are still deployed investigating dimensional anomalies, Demiurge replied. Those remaining in the capital will be focused on protecting the High Priest during the festival procession. Nevertheless, we must assume they have safeguards specifically designed to detect Abyss Walker energy, Ains cautioned. His glowing eyes fixed on Naruto. Can you fully suppress your power signature? Naruto nodded. With concentration, yes. Though using any void abilities would immediately reveal me. Then avoid doing so unless absolutely necessary, Ains instructed. The void needle should remain inactive until you reach the mirror. Physical skills and basic chakra techniques only. They spent another hour reviewing contingencies and communication protocols. As the meeting concluded, Ains addressed them one final time. The success of this mission is crucial. With both the needle and the mirror, We gain significant advantage in addressing the dimensional threats. However, his tone grew more serious. No artifact is worth sacrificing yourselves. If the situation becomes untenable, retreat immediately. The Guardians bowed deeply at this rare display of concern from their master. Naruto simply nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. As they prepared to depart, Albedo approached Naruto privately. "A word," she requested, leading him slightly away from the others. "What is it?" he asked, noting the unusual tension in her posture. "If we encounter your counterpart, Sasuke, during this mission, what will you do?" she asked directly. Naruto considered the question carefully. "If he interferes with our objective, I'll oppose him. If he's pursuing his own agenda without directly threatening us, I'll let him be, even if that agenda conflicts with Lord Ains's interests." Albedo pressed. "That depends on the specific situation," Naruto replied honestly. "I won't betray your trust, Albedo. But I also won't automatically consider Sasuke an enemy to be eliminated. He's complicated." She studied him for a long moment, her disguised features making her expression harder to read than usual. "Your loyalty is divided," she observed, though without the accusation he might have expected. "My goal is clear," Naruto countered. "Repair the dimensional barriers, protect both our worlds. That's what matters most." After another thoughtful pause, Albedo nodded. "Fair enough. But know this, my primary loyalty remains with Lord Ains and Nazarick. Should your actions ever threaten either, our partnership would end immediately." "I'd expect nothing less," Naruto replied with a small smile. "Though I'm touched you're concerned enough to warn me in advance." A flicker of something, perhaps annoyance, perhaps amusement, crossed Albedo's disguised features. "Don't misinterpret practical caution for sentimentality, Abyss Walker." With that, she turned and rejoined the others, leaving Naruto to wonder if her warning had been purely professional or something more personal. Their relationship had evolved significantly since his arrival in this world, from outright hostility to reluctant cooperation to something approaching mutual respect. But the boundaries remained clearly drawn, at least in Albedo's mind. As they gathered for teleportation to their aging area outside the Theocracy capital, Naruto found himself reflecting on how much had changed in the relatively short time since he'd arrived in this world. He had gained strange new powers, formed alliances with beings he would once have considered monsters, and now stood at the center of a conflict that threatened the very fabric of reality. And through it all, he had come to rely increasingly on Albedo, a demon guardian whose loyalty to her creator should have made her his natural enemy. Yet here they were, preparing to face danger together once more. The irony wasn't lost on him as the teleportation circle activated, whisking them toward what might be their most dangerous mission yet. The slain Theocracy's capital gleamed white in the morning sun, its architecture a testament to human supremacy and religious fervor. Massive walls surrounded the city, adorned with statues of the 6 gods the Theocracy worshipped. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at every gate, scrutinizing those who entered with particular attention to any non-human features. Naruto and Albedo approached the western gate among a crowd of merchants and pilgrims arriving for the festival. Their disguises were flawless, not just in appearance but in manner. Naruto had adopted the slight stoop and cautious demeanor of a minor merchant, while Albedo walked 2 steps behind him as a dutiful wife would in the Theocracy's patriarchal society. "Papers," demanded a guard as they reached the checkpoint. Naruto produced the forged documents Demiurge had prepared, showing appropriate stamps from neighboring human kingdoms. "Here to trade during the festival," he explained in the accent of Riestai's merchants. "Cloth and spices, mostly." The guard examined their papers with practiced efficiency while another passed a glowing crystal over them, a magical detection device. Naruto maintained his composed facade while carefully suppressing the void energy within him, forcing it deep beneath his chakra network, where the crude detector couldn't sense it. After a tense moment, the guard handed back their papers. "Proceed. Remember the curfew. All visitors must be in designated inns by midnight." Of course," Naruto nodded deferentially. Wouldn't want to miss the blessings of the festival anyway. They passed through the gate into the bustling city beyond. Despite the Theocracy's reputation for austerity, the capital during festival time was alive with color and activity. Streamers in the colors of the 6 gods hung between buildings, market stalls offered regional delicacies, and street pay. Our formers entertained crowds of citizens and visitors alike. The procession begins at noon, Albedo murmured as they navigated the crowded streets. The cathedral will be most accessible during that time, when attention is focused on the high priest's blessing in the main square. Naruto nodded slightly. Let's establish our presence first. Actual merchants would browse the market, perhaps make small purchases. They spent the next hour doing exactly that, examining goods, haggling over prices, and purchasing a few small items to maintain their cover. All the while, they observed the city's security patterns and the flow of people toward the cathedral district. As noon approached, bells began to toll throughout the city. The crowds shifted, flowing toward the main thoroughfare where the procession would pass. Naruto and Albedo moved with them initially, then gradually worked their way toward the cathedral as others focused on securing good viewing positions along the route. The cathedral of 6 virtues dominated the central district, a massive structure of white stone and stained glass, its 6 spires representing each of the theocracy's gods. Unlike the rest of the city, the cathedral grounds remained relatively quiet, with most worshippers having left to witness the procession. Now, Naruto murmured as they approached the less used eastern entrance. Security is minimized during the procession. They entered the cathedral with a small group of elderly worshippers who had chosen prayer over the crowded spectacle outside. The interior was cavernous and imposing, massive columns supported a vaulted ceiling painted with scenes of the 6 gods defeating various non-human races. Incense hung heavy in the air, partially masking the lingering energy Naruto could sense beneath the surface. The dimensional signature is strong here, he whispered to Albedo as they knelt in prayer to maintain their disguise. The mirror is definitely below us. Albedo nodded slightly, her eyes tracking the movements of the few priests remaining in the main chamber. The access point should be behind the altar, through the clergy's quarters. They waited patiently until the priests began a ceremonial chanting that required their full attention. Using the distraction, Naruto and Albedo slipped from their pews and moved along the shadowed side aisle toward a small door partially hidden behind a tapestry. The door led to a narrow corridor used by the cathedral staff. Naruto created a single shadow clone to watch their backs while they proceeded deeper into the restricted areas. They encountered few people. Most of the clergy were either participating in the procession or managing the crowds outside. According to the intelligence, Albedo said quietly as they descended a servant's staircase. The artifact chamber should be on the 3rd sublevel, beyond the reliquary. The lower levels of the cathedral were noticeably different from the public areas above, older, austere, with none of the ornate decoration seen upstairs. Ancient symbols were carved into the stone walls, some resembling the patterns Naruto had seen in the chamber of the Void Needle. These markings are protection wards, he observed, studying them as they passed. Designed specifically against void energy. Can they detect you? Albedo asked. Not as long as I keep my power suppressed, Naruto replied. But if I need to use any void abilities, then don't, she said simply. They reached the reliquary, a large chamber filled with display cases containing what the theocracy considered holy artifacts. Most were mundane objects attributed to their gods or early leaders, but some radiated genuine magical energy. Guards stood at attention at the far door, their armor more elaborate than those above. We need a distraction, Albedo whispered as they ducked behind a large display case. Naruto nodded, forming a hand seal. The shadow clone he'd left upstairs dispelled itself, sending its knowledge back to him instantly. The procession is returning early, he reported. Something's happened outside. A moment later, horns sounded throughout the cathedral. The guards at the reliquary door tensed, listening to the signal. Intruder alert, one said to the other. Level 2 priority. Demiurge or Shaltir? Albedo wondered quietly. Neither, Naruto replied, his expression darkening. The clone spotted Sasuke entering the cathedral through the main doors. He's not bothering with disguise. The guards conferred briefly, then one departed, presumably to investigate the disturbance. The remaining guard took a more alert stance, his hand resting on his weapon. This complicates things, Albedo murmured. Or simplifies them, Naruto countered. Sasuke's creating a diversion whether he intended to or not. We should use it, He formed another hand seal, and a small smoke bomb dropped from his sleeve into his palm, a ninja tool he'd brought from his world. With a precise flick, he sent it rolling across the reliquary floor. It detonated near the remaining guard, releasing a cloud of sleeping gas. The guard had just enough time to raise an alarm before collapsing. Immediately, magical ward's throughout the reliquary flared to life, and a high-pitched ringing echoed through the chamber. So much for stealth, Naruto commented as they rushed toward the now unguarded door. Time for Plan B. We don't have a Plan B, Albedo reminded him, drawing a concealed dagger from beneath her dress. Improvise and survive, Naruto replied with a grim smile. That's always Plan B. Beyond the relic, Ueri door lay a narrow spiral staircase descending into darkness. They could hear shouts and footsteps above them, reinforcements responding to the guard's alarm. Without hesitation, they plunged downward, Naruto creating a small flame of chakra in his palm to light their way. The staircase ended at another heavily warded door, this one sealed with both physical locks and magical barriers. Albedo examined it critically. Breaking through will take time we don't have, she observed. Naruto studied the wards carved around the frame. These are specifically designed to keep void energy out, he said. Which means, using void energy would trigger them, Albedo finished, frowning. Or, Naruto countered, it might overload them. These were designed to repel external void energy, not contain it if it's already inside their perimeter. Before Albedo could object, Naruto placed his hand against the center of the door and released a small, controlled pulse of void energy. The wards flared brilliantly, struggling to repel the power, but as he had suspected, they were oriented outward. The energy rebounded through the ward network, creating a cascading overload. With a sound like shattering glass, the magical barriers collapsed. The physical locks remained, but Albedo made short work of those with her enhanced strength, wrenching the mechanism apart with a single powerful twist. The door swung open to reveal a circular chamber beyond. Unlike the austere stone of the cathedral above, this room was lined with a strange, glossy black material that seemed to absorb light. In the center, on a raised dais, stood an ornate frame containing what appeared to be a mirror of liquid darkness. The void mirror, Naruto breathed, feeling the artifact's power even from the doorway. They stepped into the chamber cautiously. The door swung shut behind them of its own accord, the broken locks somehow repaired instantly. Naruto glanced back in alarm. The chamber exists partially outside normal space, he realized. Time flows differently here. Albedo approached the mirror carefully. No obvious traps or additional wards. They relied on the outer defenses, Naruto observed. They never expected anyone to get this far. The void mirror was unlike any mirror Naruto had seen. Its surface rippled gently, like the surface of a pond in a light breeze. When he looked directly into it, he saw not his reflection but swirling darkness punctuated by distant points of light, like stars seen from the depths of space. How do we transport it? Albedo asked, studying the ornate frame that held the liquid-like surface. Before Naruto could answer, the mirror's surface changed. The swirling darkness parted, revealing an image, not of the chamber, but of Konoha. The view zoomed in on the Hokage Tower, then through its walls to a hidden subterranean chamber Naruto had never seen before. It's responding to your presence, Albedo observed. Showing you your world. The image continued to shift, revealing figures gathered around what appeared to be a smaller version of the corrupted crystal they had destroyed in the forest. Among them, Naruto recognized several high-ranking officials from Konoha, including two elders he had never fully trusted. Sasuke was telling the truth, he murmured, watching as the figures performed some kind of ritual around the crystal. Someone in Konoha has been experimenting with void energy. The mirror shifted again, showing earlier scenes, experiments dating back years, some involving subjects who died horribly as void energy consumed them from within. Naruto watched in growing horror as the truth unfolded before him. They've been trying to harness void power for decades, he said, his voice tight with anger. They're the ones who weakened the barriers enough for the void harvesters to notice our world. Albedo studied the images dispassionately. Your leaders sacrificed their own people in pursuit of power. Not so different from the theocracy, it seems. Not my leaders, Naruto corrected grimly. A faction within Konoha. The same people who've manipulated events from the shadows for generations. The mirror's surface rippled again, this time showing the cathedral above them. Priests and guards were swarming through the building, searching for the intruders. And moving among them, almost casually avoiding detection, was Sasuke, his disguise minimal. Just enough to pass casual inspection as he made his way toward the lower levels. "He's coming here," Naruto said. "We need to move quickly." He drew the void needle from its sheath, feeling the artifact respond to the proximity of the mirror. The two objects seemed to recognize each other, resonating with similar energies. "How do we take it?" Albedo asked again, eyeing the ornate frame that held the mirror's liquid surface. Naruto approached the dais, studying the construction carefully. "We don't need the frame," he realized. "Just the mirror itself." He raised the void needle, touching its tip to the surface of the mirror. Instead of breaking, the liquid darkness parted around the blade, then began to flow along it, drawn as if by magnetism. Slowly, methodically, the surface of the mirror transferred itself to the needle, coating the blade in a layer of the same fluid darkness. "It's merging with the needle," Albedo observed with fascination. "They're meant to work together," Naruto explained as the last of the mirror's substance left the frame, which now stood empty. Two parts of a whole. The void needle, now coated in the mirror's essence, pulsed with combined power. When Naruto held it up, he could see reflected in its surface not just the chamber around them, but glimpses of other places, Konoha, Nazarick, and realms he didn't recognize. "Now we have both," he said, returning the enhanced artifact to its sheath. "Let's." The chamber shuddered violently, cutting off his words. Cracks appeared in the glossy black walls, and the empty frame of the mirror toppled from its dais. "What's happening?" Albedo demanded, bracing herself as the floor beneath them tilted. The mirror was stabilizing this pocket dimension, Naruto realized. Without it, the chamber is collapsing back into normal space. The door they had entered through warped and twisted, no longer leading back to the staircase but opening onto a swirling vortex of dislocated reality. Through the chaos, Naruto caught glimpses of different parts of the cathedral, as though the chamber was trying to reconnect with multiple locations simultaneously. "We need to get out before we're trapped in the collapse," he urged. Drawing on his void energy despite the risk. "I can create a portal directly to the extraction point." "Do it," Albedo agreed, abandoning caution as the chamber continued to disintegrate around them. Naruto focused his power, creating a stable rift that bypassed the chaotic vortex of the collapsing pocket dimension. Beyond it, he could see the abandoned building, where Mare had established their emergency teleportation circle. "Go," he shouted to Albedo as more cracks spider-webbed across the walls and ceiling. She moved toward the portal but stopped suddenly. As a figure appeared in the warping doorway, Sasuke, his Sharingan glowing as he surveyed the deteriorating chamber. "Naruto," he acknowledged calmly, despite the chaos around them. "I see you've acquired the mirror." "Not the time, Sasuke," Naruto replied tensely. "This entire space is collapsing." "I'm aware," Sasuke said, stepping fully into the chamber as pieces of the ceiling began to fall. Quote, "Which is why I came to ensure you escaped with the artifacts." Albedo's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "You're helping us now." "I'm helping the artifacts reach someone who can use them properly," Sasuke corrected. The theocracy would have eventually destroyed themselves and everything around them trying to control powers beyond their comprehension. Another violent tremor shook the chamber. The floor beneath them split open, revealing not stone or earth but a swirling void that hungrily devoured the falling debris. Explanations later, Naruto decided, grabbing Albedo's arm and pulling her toward his portal. "We're leaving, Sasuke. Are you coming or not?" Sasuke glanced at the growing void beneath them, then at the artifacts Naruto carried. "Not yet. There's still the third artifact to locate. But we'll meet again soon enough." With that, he created his own rift, crimson-edged and leading somewhere Naruto couldn't see, and stepped through it just as another section of floor collapsed into the hungry void. "Stubborn as always," Naruto muttered, then turned to Albedo. "Let's go." They leapt through Naruto's portal together, emerging in the abandoned building where Mare waited anxiously. The small dark elf jumped to his feet as they appeared, his mismatched eyes wide with concern. "Why, you made it," he exclaimed. "The detection wards all over the city started going crazy a few minutes ago." Demiurge said to prepare for immediate extraction. The Theocracy's dimensional research facility is collapsing, Naruto explained quickly. We have the mirror, but the entire cathedral may be compromised. As if to confirm his words, a distant rumbling sound reached them even through the building's thick walls. Mare's eyes widened further. That's our cue to leave, Albedo decided. Mare, activate the teleportation circle. The dark elf nodded, kneeling beside the prepared magic circle and beginning the activation sequence. As the circle began to glow, Naruto moved to the building's single grimy window. Looking out toward the cathedral district, what he saw made his breath catch. The cathedral's 6 spires were dissolving upward, breaking apart into particles of light that dispersed into the sky. The building itself seemed to be imploding, collapsing not outward but inward, as though being consumed from within by the pocket dimension's collapse. The Theocracy just lost their most sacred site, he observed grimly as the teleportation circle brightened around them. And we gained another artifact, Albedo replied pragmatically. Lord Ains will be pleased. The teleportation activated, whisking them back to the safety of Nazarick in a flash of magical energy. As the world dissolved around them, Naruto's last glimpse of the Theocracy capital showed chaos spreading from the cathedral district outward, a fitting metaphor, he thought, for the dimensional instability threatening all their worlds. The combined void needle and mirror lay on a cushion in Nazarick's treasury, its surface occasionally rippling to show glimpses of distant realms. Ains studied it with evident fascination, his skeletal fingers hovering just above the artifact without quite touching it. Remarkable, he murmured. 2 of the 3 cosmic regulatory tools, united after countless millennia apart. The power they contain is substantial. Naruto, Albedo, and the other guardians stood in a semicircle around the display, all watching the artifact with varying degrees of interest or wariness. Can you use it now? Demiurge asked Naruto. To begin repairing the dimensional barriers. Partially, Naruto replied. The mirror aspect lets me see where the damage is most severe, and the needle can repair individual rifts more efficiently than before. But for a complete restoration of cosmic stability, we need the 3rd artifact, Ains finished. The Void Key. Naruto nodded. Without it, I can treat symptoms but not cure the underlying problem. And this key lies, beyond the veil of death, where time flows backward. Albedo recited the cryptic description. No clearer meaning has emerged from our research. Actually, Naruto said, the mirror showed me something when I first used it properly. He glanced at Ains, who nodded permission to continue. There's a realm connected to this one, not my world, but another place entirely. A massive frozen wasteland where undead naturally gather. The Cat's Plains, Ains suggested. No, something colder, older, Naruto clarified. The mirror showed me a fortress of ice at its center, existing in what looked like eternal twilight. Time there doesn't flow normally, events repeat and reverse without logical sequence. Demiurge adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. That description matches legends of the frozen terminus, a theoretica. Plane where souls rejected by both heaven and hell congregate. It exists in cosmological theories but has never been confirmed. Until now, Naruto said. The mirror revealed it as the location of the Void Key. A realm of death where time flows backward, Albedo mused. The description fits. Ains's glowing eyes narrowed slightly. Entering such a realm would be exceedingly dangerous, even for beings of our caliber. The laws of reality themselves would be unreliable. Nevertheless, we must attempt it, Demiurge stated. The dimensional instabilities continue to worsen. Reports from Aura Gents indicate new rifts appearing daily throughout the continent. And my world is suffering similar effects, Naruto added. The mirror showed me multiple tears appearing in Konoha and beyond, despite efforts to contain them. Ains was silent for a long moment, his skeletal features unreadable as always. Finally, he straightened to his full impressive height. We will launch an expedition to this frozen terminus, he decided. Naruto, as our Abyss Walker, you must lead it. Albedo will accompany you, along with Cocytus, whose nature may provide some resistance to the extreme cold of that realm. When do we depart? Naruto asked. After adequate preparation, Ains replied. This is not a mission to undertake hastily. We must gather appropriate equipment, research what little is known of this realm, and ensure Nazarick remains defended in your absence. 3 days, Demiurge suggested. That should provide sufficient time without unnecessarily delaying our response to the dimensional crisis. Ains nodded in agreement. 3 days. In the meantime, Naruto, you will continue practicing with the combined artifacts. Master their current capabilities fully before attempting to add the third. With that, the meeting concluded. The Guardians dispersed to their various duties, preparing Nazarick for the challenges ahead. Naruto remained by the artifact, studying its shifting surface thoughtfully. Something troubles you, Albedo observed, lingering after the others had departed. Naruto glanced up at her. I'm wondering if we're being manipulated. Her golden eyes narrowed slightly. Explain. The timing of everything, Naruto said, gesturing to the artifact. The Void Harvester appearing in Konoha just as experiments there reached a critical stage. My arrival here coinciding with the theocracy's increased activity. Sasuke's transformation and his convenient appearances whenever we find an artifact. You suspect a greater design at work, Albedo concluded. I know there is, Naruto replied grimly. The question is, whose? The Void Harvesters seem intelligent but not masterminds. They're more like forces of nature with appetites. Someone or something else is orchestrating events. Albedo considered this thoughtfully. Lord Ains has expressed similar concerns, though he keeps his own counsel on such matters. And what do you think? Naruto asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. She was silent for a moment, her wings shifting slightly as she formulated her response. I think power attracts manipulation, she finally said. The artifacts were created to maintain cosmic balance. Their very existence suggests a system designed by intelligent beings who might take interest if that system were threatened. The original Abyss Walkers, Naruto murmured, the term feeling right somehow. The ones who created these tools in the first place. Albedo nodded. If such beings exist, they might well be guiding events from the shadows, testing those who would wield their creations. Testing us, Naruto concluded, looking back at the artifact. To see if we're worthy of the power they contain. Are capable of using it correctly, Albedo added. They stood in contemplative silence for a moment, the implications of their conversation settling between them. Finally, Naruto straightened, his decision made. Whether we're being tested or manipulated doesn't change what needs to be done. He said firmly. The barriers must be repaired, regardless of who or what is behind their weakening. A pragmatic approach, Albedo approved. Focus on the objective, not the unseen hands that may be guiding events. Naruto smiled slightly. For someone created to serve without question, you have a remarkably philosophical mind, Albedo. She bristled momentarily at the reference to her creation. But her expression softened almost immediately. Perhaps I am developing beyond my initial parameters. I'd say that's definitely true, Naruto replied warmly. Their eyes met briefly, something unspoken passing between them. Then Albedo looked away, her wings rustling in what Naruto had come to recognize as her equivalent of a nervous gesture. I should begin preparations for the expedition, she said, her tone returning to its usual professional detachment. The frozen terminus will present unique challenges. Albedo, Naruto called as she turned to leave. She paused, looking back at him. Thank you for trusting me with your thoughts. I know it's not easy for you to question larger designs. She studied him for a moment, her golden eyes unreadable. Perhaps you have influenced me more than I realized, Abyss Walker. With that ambiguous statement, she departed, leaving Naruto alone with the artifact and his thoughts. He turned back to the combined needle and mirror, watching as its surface shifted to show various realms connected by the cosmic web of reality. For a brief moment, the artifact displayed a scene from Konoha, his friends gathered in the Hokage's office, planning what appeared to be another search expedition. Sakura looked tired but determined, Kakashi thoughtful, Shikamaru intensely focused on maps spread before them. They hadn't given up on finding him. I'll find a way back, Naruto promised quietly. After we fix what's broken. The artifact's surface rippled again, showing a new image, the frozen wasteland he had described. Its twilight landscape dominated by the massive ice fortress at its center. Within that structure, barely visible through layers of crystalline ice, something glinted with familiar energy, the final artifact they sought. Naruto's resolve hardened as he gazed at the distant key. 3 more days of preparation, and then their most dangerous mission yet would begin. Whatever tests or manipulations lay ahead, he would face them alongside his unlikely allies from this strange world. And perhaps, just perhaps, he would find answers about his own transformed nature along the way. Chapter 2 End.